All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to ADQ's OpSearch Program webinar. Today we're going to be covering system compliance and operator ethics. If you are just coming in, please keep in mind all the handouts for the presentation. They're not available right now in the handout dropdown, but we will be posting a share file shortly. The agenda itself is available in the handout section. For any reason you do not have access to the handout section, you can contact the OpSearch program and we'll send you a copy. Oh, and I forgot I was doing these transitions. All right, then just a few housekeeping rules for this webinar. Professional development hours are available today. If you stay from 8 a.m. to noon, you can earn 4 hours. Please keep your agenda for your records. As mentioned earlier, the agenda itself is located in the handout dropdown of the sidebar. If you do not have access to the handout section, just go ahead, please email the OpSearch program after the webinar or during the webinar. We'll confirm your attendance through analytics and we'll go ahead and send you a copy. Webcams are disabled and all attendees are muted. This is listen only mode. For questions or comments, please use the question drop-down box. If you don't have access to that as well, please reach out to the OpSearch program and we'll follow up with you on any lingering questions. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our drinking water training YouTube site. And like I said, for any further comments, feedback, you can always reach out to the OpSearch program at azdeq.gov. You can give us a call, 602-771-0100 for any questions too. All right. For the next 4 hours that we have you, we'll be covering quite a few topics today. I'm going to start with a few portal updates as well as a live demo of a frequently asked question. We're going to follow with operator ethics, and we're going to go quickly into consumer confidence reports, followed by understanding certification periods and PDH alignment. We'll have a quick break around 10 a.m. and then we'll wrap up this session with the microbiological sampling site plan and then the monitoring assistance program. But first, very quick poll. These aren't questions you have to get right. It's just to help us as speakers gauge your knowledge on the upcoming topics. All right, let's launch it here. Launch. All right, is your system currently preparing their own CCR? All right, give that another 30 seconds. Looks like majority are saying yes. Few are still in the no, some are not sure. And luckily only 2% of you do not know what a CCR is currently, which is good to hear. All right, looks like we went on that. So there we go. We've got a good percentage of you who do know what CCR reports are and you are preparing. Good job. Some of you are not or not involved, and some of you are here to learn more about CCRs. Perfect. Right. And this is the next question. This isn't like a compliance question or anything. We just want to understand your knowledge base. Do you understand the regulations that could lead to suspension, probation, or revocation of a certification? And that is okay if you say somewhat. Absolutely okay. We will not come after you because of your response. All right. Majority of you, yes. And some of you are saying somewhat, but you're still here to learn. Perfect. We'll be covering a little bit of that in compliance for the operator ethics presentation. 82%. All right, we'll go ahead and close that. Share. A good amount of you, yes. So this will be a refresher, and for some of you, this will be the operator ethics will be a new presentation. Just stay in compliance. We still want all of our operators to keep their certifications. So point of the rule review. Yep, hide this. All right. So do you understand the current requirements for your systems? MSSP plan. Seeing a lot of yeses. Some who are rarely involved. That's understandable too. And somewhat, but here to learn more. Okay, let's get to it. 75% in. Wait for about 80% vote. All right, close there. Share. Majority of you, yes. We got 25%, somewhat, but they're still here to learn. And some of you are not involved. You're not required. Your role is not required to sample for total coliform, so this is fine. Still, stay tuned. There we go. And this next question, how familiar are you with the resources offered by the Monitoring Assistance Program? All right. Wait for another 80% here. Excuse me. All right, 15% yes, and it's fine if your system has opted out. 57% somewhat, but you are still here to learn. 20% of you are currently in the program. Welcome. So refreshers and new information for all around. And then we have one more question. Here we go. So this is just a thought exercise. So operators with 2 certifications, 1 certification period. How many PDHs do you have to earn? This isn't, like I said, this isn't counting against you. This is just to make sure we're explaining our regulations correctly to you. Okay, wait for another 80% here. All right. So 83% of you said 30 PDHs. You are correct. PDHs are earned per certification period, not certification. For the rest, you said 4%. The 4% that said 60, that's absolutely fine. I'll be covering that later. And the other 13% who are not sure, you are still here to learn. We'll cover all of these topics throughout the webinar. Right. Thank you very much for participating in our polls today. And just as a quick reminder too for PDHs, if you are watching in a group, please make sure that even if you're watching off of one person's login information, please make sure you are registered for our own records so that if we have to look at our analytics and confirm Jane Doe was here, we can give you the agenda and not have to reach out to other people to confirm your attendance. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move into updates from the OpCert program. I only have a few, and then I wanted to cover a live demo of a frequently asked question from operators, which is, how do I add the PDHs and how do I navigate my PDHs that are there? Okay. A few of you may or may not have come into this bug, this 1969, 1972 bug. If you are unaware, when a few operators have added a new certification, they pass the exam, they're certifying through ADEQ. For some reason, the certification doesn't appear on their active tab, it will appear inactive because the system changed their date from 2023 or 2024 to 1969 with the expiration date in 1972. Uh, our IT support believes they've found the bug to fix this, the bug, and they've fixed it. But if there are any issues, if you continue to certify and see a new certification in the inactive tab, please reach out to us. I haven't seen any new cases in the last month, but it's always good to check, especially if you yourself are not the direct person certifying. Maybe you have an admin or an assistant who is pretty much certifying for you to pay on your behalf. Always check your portal, make sure everything's up to date and your numbers, your dates especially, are looking correct. The homepage had a few updates for the portal. There are now links to the early exam and the reciprocity review. We don't to like denying early exam and reciprocities applications. Typically, it's because there was a misunderstanding in the rules and the requirements. So we highly encourage you to follow these links, review our process, review the rule before you apply, because both application fees are non-refundable, whether you're approved or denied. We now have a link to the search database to confirm your email on file. Many of you have reached out saying, I do not have a password for the portal. And truthfully, there are no passwords required for the portal, only verification codes. And in my demo here, I will go through that. Let's see here. All right. So if everyone can see my screen, I want to make sure. Oh, I never closed the poll. Here we go. Manage polls. Get off. Hmm. Haha, there we go. So I think I was going through the presentation and you guys are still looking at the polls. My apologies. So here we go. All right. Thank you very much, Joseph and Anupa, for letting us know. All right. So back to the demo. What I was mentioning earlier with the update for the portal screen. Here you have the links to review before you submit an application. Then also here we have this link here for the operators who are currently certified to double check their emails. For example, if I go here and I log in, let's just say I actually put in my email and I say instead of gov, I put gob. What I'm going to get is this password screen. There are no passwords for the portal. No matter what you put in here, you will not be able to access the portal. There are only verification codes. So if you see this screen, back out. You can go here to our search database. You can type in your first name and your last name if you have a very common last name or very common first name. And then you will see the email that we have on file for you right here. It's not gob, it's gov. So I can take this email, head straight back to the portal login. And then I will be presented with a send me the code button. This verification code will go to the email on file. It is an automated email, a do not reply email. Some of you have firewalls in place that may prevent this email from showing up. Please check your spam. If that still doesn't work, go ahead and reach out to us. It might be a case that we might need to change your email address. So my code came in pretty instantly. This code will generate differently for each time you log in. Press verify, and it'll give you access to your dashboard. You'll always be met with this alert: no facilities to add. Please confirm. And no, I do not have a facility to add. You'll be met with your active tabs. And as I mentioned with the 1969 bug, if you don't see a new certification here, it'll appear in your inactive tab here. Now, like I said, frequently asked questions was how to add PDHs to earn credit for renewals. You'll go to this button here that says add PDHs, and you'll see you can either search for description, you'll see how many entries of PDHs that you have available, and then you'll see a list of everything that you have uploaded. You can sort by start date. You'll always need a description. The modified date is just if you change something. So there's nothing here right now, but if I view edit, whether I change something or not, and I press save, the modified date will appear as well. If I want to get rid of this entry altogether, I can just press the delete button. Whether there are or are not, or if there are no PDHs here, you will still see add another button here, just for consistency, because we expect you guys to have your professional development hours as you go. You can press add here, and you always want the start date. So the start date can be the same day. The start and end date can be the same day as for a 1-day training. Or if you did the training over the span of days, weeks, months, you'll want to make sure that start date is during this time. The hours have to be in whole or half increments, no quarters, and you do need a brief description. For files here, you would choose your file. You can either drop in, excuse me. You can either drop in a document, or you can choose a file and search for one. For our purposes here, I'll go ahead and I'll start today. Let's just say for this one, this webinar is the same day. It's still going to be 4 hours. Description here, I'll copy it over. You can just copy the title. It's an operator ethics webinar. As I said, with the drop downs, you can either pull over and then save, or you can go searching for it through your files. You would press save, and now your entry total will change. And you'll see your new adding at the top, depending on how you have it sorted by description or date. The portal does not tell you how many PDHs you have, mainly due because not all of these PDHs will apply to all certifications, which I will cover when I talk about your certification period and PDHs. But this is a brief rundown. If you have any questions or you ever need help, you can press this button here for the need help. IT or the OpCert line is available. I believe our user guide has been added. Not yet, but the user guide now for the portal, because many of you have asked, is located on the home page underneath See More. And the portal guide pretty much goes over everything from logging in to renewals, upgrades, early exam applications approved or denied, and reciprocity approved or denied, adding facilities, updating information. And as always, for updating your email, you do need to reach out to the OpCert program. Okay. Am I seeing any questions so far? Let's see here. Let's see. Okay, thank you, Oprah. Can you remove older PDHs? As of now, you can do that. You can delete them, but you do need to keep records of your PDHs for a minimum of 5 years. So if you do not want them on your portal, make sure they are in a safe folder somewhere where you can access them upon request of ADEQ or your employer. All right. And then as always, please make sure you log out. Some of us, like myself, if you're consistently on here, it'll leave you logged in, but if you're on a shared computer, of course, someone can come in, change information, get information from you that is private to you. So make sure you always log out after you're done. Oh, perfect, Nathan. I'm actually about to cover that right now. All right, let's go back to this presentation. All right, just another quick update. We are in the process of finalizing the contract for a third exam proctor. So currently we have Gateway Community College and City of Phoenix who provide the WPI exams on behalf of ADEQ. We have a third contractor on the way. Once the contract is complete, we will announce the name of this contractor, as well as their registration information and the locations for where you can test. We now have a new person on the team for OpCert who is going to be developing the backflow cross-connection program information for ADEQ and then providing further training on the topic as well, since it is in such high demand. All right, and then we have a few minutes for a brief rule review. And we're going to be talking about water system owner roles and responsibilities, since Jason will be covering quite a bit of the operator roles and responsibilities as well within his ethics presentation. And Anupa, yes, you can scan and add certifications for reference. The method I was showing you was just to download a PDF, but if you do not have it down, you can't download it. If you got a physical copy of your certificate or agenda, you can also just take a picture of it, or you can scan it in, and then upload it to the portal. Just make sure you retain that physical copy. If you ever lose that copy, please make sure you have the contact information of the trainer. ADEQ, we do retain documents as well, your proof of attendance, I should say, and then we will also be able to give you an agenda, but you need to give us the webinar or the in-person event that you attended, time, date, so we can narrow it down. We offer a lot of training, and we can't go through 50 different folders to find you, so please help us out. Oh, sorry, Paul. I will speak a bit louder. All right, just a bit into the facility owner's responsibilities. This is just covering 104 for general requirements. In case you don't know, Title 18, Chapter 5, Article 1 is the rule regarding operator certification and system owner requirements. For a facility owner, they do need to make sure that their certified operator or their direct responsible charge is certified at or above the grade of the facility. So if you are a grade 3, 4 facility, make sure your direct responsible charge or operator record is a grade 3 or 4 for your facility. If you are a grade 1 facility, you just need a grade 1 operator. All right, provide all the names of the current operators on file to ADEQ. We do need to know who's working at your system that's certified. Notify ADEQ should the operator of record change or your operator direct responsible charge changes. If you lose your operator or you need to swap them out, please notify ADEQ. You can also change the operator's status through the certification portal. And this is to your question, Nathan. Yes, grade 3 for facilities need to have an on-site operator at all time, 24/7. 1 and 2 can be remote. A few best practices for facility owners. Just keep up with the best management practices and the regulatory information. Please do not leave all of this to the operator of record. You need to be on the up and up with your system just as much as they do. Address any financial needs or asset needs for your facility and plan for any emergencies, contingency plans. This is beneficial for you in the long run. Operators come and go, but your system is yours until it closes or until you move off. For knowing the fundamental aspects of your water systems, knowing the fundamental aspects of the water system operations, excuse me, and what is needed for the public water system to supply safe and adequate supply water to customers. This does go back to the first one, staying informed with regulation and being in the know of your system. Keep your records, please. Like I said, operators come and go. It'll be a smoother transition if you can go ahead and introduce that new operator to pretty much all aspects of your system, including records, maintenance logs, sampling logs. required documents that you'll need them to control and maintain pretty much. In general, owners are ultimately responsible for all aspects of maintaining compliance with drinking water regulation. If any issues do arise, you are just as involved as the operator with any enforcement actions that the ADEQ may bring forth towards an investigation. And if you have any questions about operator responsibilities, if you are unsure, if you're just like, hey, I've got an operator who's not telling me anything, please reach out to ADEQ. We are here to help. We definitely want to keep you guys in compliance, considering the health of the public and the environment is at stake if anything is to go wrong with your system. I do see some more questions here. Can we use college credits for PDHs? Yes, you can. And college credits will be considered CEUs. CEUs are translated, one CEU is translated to 10 PDHs. I will put in a word of caution for CEUs. It is a public domain term. I mean, anyone can put CEUs on their agenda for a one-day workshop. But if you attend, say, a 12-hour, 2-day conference and they put 12 CEUs, no, you did not earn 120 PDHs. You still earned 12 PDHs. You will see some organizations like AZ Water, they will put you earned 0.8 CEUs, which technically means you stayed for an 8-hour training that day. So if you have any questions in regard to what applies to CEUs and what doesn't, please reach out to the OPCERT program. All right. That said, that concludes the OPCERT portal and program updates. With that, we're going to go ahead and move on to operator ethics with Jason Bobko, who is our engineering, TA, and OPCERT unit manager. Is he still answering a few questions?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Ebony. One thing to clarify, when it comes to grade 3 and 4 systems, they do not need an operator on site 24/7. The grade 3 or 4 has to be available.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, by phone or able to be contacted by a operator who is operating the facility that is certified at one grade less than that of the facility. So if it's a grade 4 system, they could have a grade 3 operator operating the facility as long as a grade 4 is available by phone or to be contacted. So I just wanted to clarify that the requirement is not that they have to be on site 24/7.
Correct. And that's the operator of record does not need to be on site, just a representative?
Correct.
Okay. So apologies for my incorrect statement there. I did not clarify correctly. So we'll go ahead and move on to Jason here. Got you. Go ahead and change the screen power to you.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, you're good to go. Thank you, Jason.
All right. Very good. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out. It's been a while since I've given this particular presentation, and unfortunately, I've had to update it, folks. Meaning, I added some additional case studies to the presentation. Um, you know, as operators, I'm an operator myself. I've been certified since 2006. I have my grade 4s in distribution and water treatment. I came from the operations world. Coming to ADEQ has been a really one of the greatest things I could have done in my career. And I brought that perspective of operations to the agency when I came in. So I want to thank you all for what you do. Honestly, the operators, the certified operators we have in this state do a tremendous job working in the environment that we're in. A lot of remote systems, a lot of older systems, a lot of groundwater systems. So, it's not a matter of how complex your system is, because every single water system we have out here is as important as the next because of what we do. You're living in the desert. And excuse me, people in the desert, we need water. That's really what it comes down to. So I want to thank you all for being here today and thank you for what you do. So today I'm going to talk about operator ethics though. And one of the reasons that we started doing this presentation was we had started seeing some behaviors out there that we kind of wish we hadn't seen. So we're going to talk about some definitions. We're going to talk about the importance of ethics when it comes to being an operator of a public water system. Now, I shouldn't even have to say that because we all know the importance of ethics. Uh, a lot of us operate independently. Nobody's standing above us watching us. Um, when you're operating a system, you're out there alone. You're making sure that the chlorine's feeding. You're making sure the well's working, the pump is working. You're making sure the pressure's good so people have water. These are the things that you're doing on a daily basis, and sometimes think it's kind of thankless, um, or you might not hear from your customers until there's a problem. But the point is that every time they turn on their tap and they get good, clean drinking water, that's because of what you're doing. So we're going to talk about some rules as they relate to ethics. And then I will go over some examples or, well, almost some common dilemmas that we've seen operators facing that I've personally faced in my career. And we'll talk about some of the case studies where people were caught acting unethically and illegally.
Excuse me, Jason.
Yeah,
Excuse me. I think your audio is coming in a bit choppy here. Excuse me. Are you working with a headset?
no, I'm not.
No.
But
Okay.
no, sir. Is that any better?
That should be better.
Okay. And I will. I'll do my best to slow down a little as well. All right.
All right.
So what is a certified operator? Well, it's an individual who holds a current certificate that's issued by the department in the field of water, wastewater treatment, water distribution, or wastewater collection. Uh, ethics, we this is a typical standard definition of what ethics is, right? But it's thinking in the gray areas between what's absolutely right and absolutely wrong. It's based on your own personal choices, right? It's your moral principles, right, that govern your behavior. Um, there are rules and standards that govern the conduct of a person or the members of a profession. We talk about the Arizona Administrative Code here, what a certified operator is. We talked about that. But making decisions based on your ethics helps you decide right, wrong, good, and bad. So you got to ask yourself, how do you decide? How do you decide right and wrong? How do you decide what's good or bad on the job? Uh, do you think about how what you do affects your coworkers? Um, do you want to look to see how your actions uh, can be perceived by others? Um, so when I communicate, I want to make sure the person who needs to know what I'm telling them understands the whole story so that they can make their most informed decision. So, I've seen plenty of sites where I've gone out and there's instructions, right? And the instructions are typically something along the line of, if there's a problem, call me. And that's not really great for somebody to learn how to do a job or do it right. Just saying call me is not really the best thing. You got to really, and that's an ethical decision, right? They're saying that they don't want to let go of that control or have somebody else develop beyond their own skill set, and that's a decision. So everything you do has a basis in ethics, um, and we also talk about integrity, right? It's the quality of being honest, and it's mostly, how are you acting when no one's looking? Okay. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff today. Why are ethics important? So ADQ's mission is to protect and enhance public health and the environment in Arizona. And we want to work with the operators to help provide safe drinking water to the public. Remember, we're we're the regulatory agency, right? We're here to ensure that all standards are being met by the operators, by the water systems, by the owners, right? That's what we do. You're on the ground. You're doing the work, right? And we want to know how we can help you do that work better. So please always communicate with us. If there's something else additional you need, we can help, right? We don't know what you need until you tell us. So protecting health, right? Ensuring public trust. So protecting public health, uh, water treatment is one of the world's most important professions. I I was in water treatment. operations directly for about 17 years. Absolutely loved it. But providing clean, safe drinking water to families and communities, or treating the water that goes down the drain from homes and businesses every day has a great impact on everyone's standard of living. Okay, so who's responsible for ensuring these things happen? Who's responsible for ensuring appropriate samples are collected to comply with the regulations? Well, the water systems are, and when it comes down to it, a lot of the owners will rely heavily on their operators to ensure these things get done. And I do another presentation where it's called owner and operator contracts. So it's up on our website. You can certainly find it there. If you're a remote operator or an owner of a small water system that can be operated remotely, check out that presentation. Look at those contracts that we have. It's a template we provide, and it really does cover all the required elements of an owner operator contract. That's what it does. So check that out. That is the whole gist of that, is to ensure that we are serving public trust. Okay. So here's the rule relating to ethics of proper operation of a facility and not falsifying records. Remember, a lot of the reporting that you all do is self-reporting. We can confirm it, and that's why we have the rules in place that you must use a certified lab that's certified with the Department of Health Services, and that we are requiring the use of the compliance monitoring data portal now, which really cuts out the temptation, and you'll see later on in the presentation a result of someone falsifying records, that instead of having a lab report to us, they decided to report the results themselves and alter those results before reporting them to us. So you'll see later on about that. But so we do have rules to help ensure that people operate in an ethical way. This is why certifications can be taken away. If operators operate a facility improperly or falsify records, there are going to be consequences. That's we have demonstrated examples later. So certificates enrolled can be revoked, suspended, or put on probation. You can see there the reasons how that could be, and that covers a pretty broad range of what could happen if you're acting illegally or unethically. Uh, so these stipulations, though, are written out in our Arizona code, R185-109B, because I know you love hearing those quote rule references, um, and that's on the last slide. But this set of requirements for an operator related to the operation of a facility are R185-109B1, B2, and B7. Um, Negligence usually includes doing something that an ordinary, reasonable, and prudent person would not do, or not doing something that such a person would do, considering the circumstances, situation, or the knowledge of the parties involved. Examples of negligence would be, rushing through your work. All right, you're prepping samples, you're running analysis, you're doing data entry or reporting, and making it just floppy. You're not writing things down the logbook like you should. You're not setting up for the next shift. Things of that nature that I've experienced. Also, not following procedures properly. Using an expired reagent or a standard because you don't want to go in the cabinet to get the next one. Things like that. Improper documentation is huge too. So um, plenty of times I've gone in and found, people just saying, "Oh no, well, I just figured, you would figure it out when you got here." And that's, we don't want that. We're talking about public health here. I don't want to go in and find a bunch of stuff written down on a napkin, right, or the back of a sheet of paper, or scrap paper taken out of the recycle bin. That's not where it belongs. That's not where it goes. So those types of things, that's not proper operation. Not that it would lead to any type of suspension or probation or revocation, but that's negligence. That's negligence, and it could lead to more bigger problems later on. So, of course, avoid negligence. That's one good thing. Being honest and ethical. So this set of rules relates to being honest and ethical in handling of data. So fraudulent activity can result in a certificate being revoked, suspended, or put on probation. Not to mention the other consequences, right? And those are, we're talking about what can impact you, but what your actions mean to the greater public, right? The greater good. If you're serving a system that serves, 25 people, let's say, it's going to be a very small system. Those are 25 people that are relying on you, right? And let's say you're working for a system that serves 1.6 million people. Okay, another one. Um, you think about the scale of your actions. One of my facilities, we're an 80 MGD facility. We serve about 240,000 people out of that facility. Okay, that's what it was. That has a very strong impact on what your negative actions or what your negligence could cause. That has a significant impact. Okay, but every single person matters. Every single part of public health is important. So whether it's 25 people or 240,000 people, your actions need to be very, very good and solid and well thought out. Okay. So fraudulent activity, um, it could just result in harm to the public health. Um, it also could result in fines for the water system, um, and it could result in prison time for the operator. So fraud is purposeful. Fraud, okay, is purposeful and intentional. Fraud is not a mistake. Fraud is something that you sought out to do to deceive someone else. Um, Fraud is an intentional misrepresentation of lab data or other data to hide known or potential problems or represent something that is not true. Sometimes the difference between fraud and an honest mistake is lack of proper documentation. And we'll go over some examples of that later. Some causes of fraud could be pressure from someone else to get things done quickly or provide a favorable result. It could be lack of resources, which creates pressure to take shortcuts or falsify data. It could be lack of oversight, right? You don't have any peer review going on. Your supervisor's not there. They're being negligent. Okay, could happen. Absolutely. And it could be that there's no audits. The supervisor just makes it too easy to cheat or cover up a smaller offense or a simple mistake or a misjudgment and end up with a snowball of mistakes. That can absolutely happen. Seen that happen. It could be a disconnect or no understanding of how the data is used, leading to no understanding of which qualifiers impact data use and which have no impact. The concept of blank does not equal zero when you're reporting data. Think about that for a moment. You'll see a lot of government documents where it says this page was intentionally left blank, right? And that's because we don't want to put oversight and say, oh, oops, was there something missing, right? So blank doesn't mean zero. And if you're going to be reporting data, you make sure that you don't report blank because that means it's not there, it's just missing. Just kind of as an aside. And this set of rules relates to complying with and cooperating with department orders, terms and conditions of probation or suspension, or investigation where information is being requested. So we will do, at times when these issues come up, we do our investigation. We'll always start our investigation in-house, meaning with ADEQ staff. And when we determine that it is worthy of follow-up or it is a criminal activity, we will refer it to our legal department, which is the state attorney general's office. Okay, so we have had plenty of times where the AG's office has come in with their special investigators and conducted a more in-depth investigation into operators. It happens. It's unfortunate. We never want that to happen, but it has. And then when they do get involved, it is to a point where ADEQ was 100% confident that something bad has happened, right? Something's happened and that require their involvement. Excuse me.
Jason,
Yes,
apologies. There's a few who still cannot hear you. Um, Maybe moving back from the mic, but could we try that method as well?
for sure. Yeah, I apologize for that if there's an issue with that. Any better?
Let's see. Let's go ahead and keep going.
All right. Excuse me. So what could happen to your certificates if upon unethical actions? So if anything happens with your certificate, the operator must notify the owner of the facility where they are employed, and ADEQ will also notify the owner of that facility. Certificate on probation or suspension. It may include, if it's just probation or suspension, it may include completion of additional PDHs, increased reporting of operator activity, limitations on activities the operator may perform, or other terms to address deficiencies in operator performance. So probation or suspension, it does not mean that you can't operate. It means you're going to be operating with restrictions or some other limitations that ADQ will set forth for a defined period of time. Okay. If the cert's put on suspension or probation, the record stays in our system, and it may be reported if reciprocity is requested from another state. Okay, we are public agency; it's public record. If you're going to get reciprocity from another state from Arizona, and they send us a request, because every state will, as it operates their program a little differently. However, the one consistent thing is we do all talk to one another when it comes to reciprocity, and we all get confirmation of the current status of the operators, okay, holding a certificate with that request. So if the cert is suspended, the individual may not operate a facility of the class of the suspended cert, so they just can't be the operator record there. Okay, you still work, and it's going to be up to your employer, obviously. If you've done something so egregious that you're getting suspended, if your cert's getting suspended, your employer is going to have something to say about it as well, I'm sure. But if a cert is revoked, that's it. You can't hold a certificate in this state again. So that's how that works. So revocation is the ultimate. You'll never hold an operator certification in Arizona again. And when it comes down to it, if you try to go to another state and get reciprocity, which again, we've seen it all. If you try to get reciprocity on a revoked cert, we will report that. How's the audio coming through now, Ebony? Any better?
It sounds like for a few, unfortunately not. But we'll see how the recording comes out at the end.
All right.
Apologies, everyone, for the audio issues.
So every situation is treated individually, though. So it is likely that all the certificates a person holds would be revoked if they held several, and likely as it will. If you're like, okay, I hold all 4 certificates. If my certificate for water treatment was getting revoked, all my certs would be revoked. Okay, so just to be clear, there's nothing saying that if you're acting so unethically or illegally that you've caused your certificate in one manner to be revoked, then you really should not be certified as an operator for anything. So keep that in mind. Okay, some op cert forms. So adding your PDHs. ADEQ does audit PDHs, okay, and we audit test scores. So we do that on a monthly basis when we get everything in. We do audit PDHs on a monthly basis as well. We have a standard work and methods that we use to go through and certify or just review PDHs that are issued or submitted by the operators. Keep in mind that if you get errors while submitting or entering your PDHs, just remember PDHs that are earned have to be earned during the start and end period dates of your certificate. Okay, so and I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but just remember if you're going to earn PDHs, they have to be earned during the start and end period dates of your certificate. Okay, keep that in mind. So make sure when you do submit your PDHs that you have evidence to back it up. Don't just simply upload a sheet of paper that says, I attended a workshop for 4 hours. That's not going to cut it for us, okay? Make sure you have something from that. And we have the ability now, you can view our YouTube webpage or website and view videos, because we have a lot of these things up there on video on the website now. It's under an operator playlist under YouTube. And you could document what you watched, when you watched it, okay, how long the duration was, and you put the URL, the actual website link in the document that we provide. It's up on our website. So you could do that. We allow that now. Okay, everything's going digital, so we're allowing that. And that could be your backup. This is another activity, though, where integrity and ethics are important and are enforced. So when you're signing the form or checking the box at the end that you're confirming that you've submitted that what you submitted is accurate and true, keep that in mind as you're saying that you are agreeing that you have actually earned these PDHs. Falsification of PDHs can subject the certificate to denial, suspension, probation, and/or revocation. Okay, it's all about an individual case-by-case study. Test scores. So we have had issues where operators, for some reason or another, will submit test scores um, that either showed they passed when they didn't, and we'll find it. Okay, we will find that, or they've for some reason passed with a pretty good score, but put in a higher score when they submitted it for their certificate. Now, in that particular case, we do reach out to the operator and we question what happened, and there are corrections will be made in the system because it could have been an honest mistake. So those are the things that we do look at, like individual case-by-case basis, and to try to get down to the bottom of it. However, when an individual scores a 54, and again, case study, and they scored an 84, that's a problem. Okay, so falsification of submissions, again, may subject to certificates to all those consequences. All right, drinking water reporting. This is one that's extremely important, folks. So keep in mind, your chain of custody is a legal document. Okay, data reporting is another activity where integrity and ethics are important and enforced. So fill out your chain of custody sheet on the spot. That means, a lot of folks, we have a tendency, I'll say it, I did it. You start your day, you have a certain number of samples you got to go collect. So you fill out your chain of custody, right? I would fill out locational data, all right? And even the date, because I know I'm going out there today, but I would not fill out the time in advance, okay? When you go there, you collect your sample, you write your date, your time on the bottle, you write your time down on your chain of custody as to when it was collected, okay? Don't do what we call time travel, which is you say, okay, I have 10 samples to do. I'm going to write down I collected them 5 minutes apart. And by the end of the day, you had 50 minutes, well, whatever, of sample collection, and that's that. Well, don't do that. Okay, that's falsifying documentation. Um, be aware of this, and we call it time travel. But also, that's just faulty information as well. So, there's standards for every one of the tests that you have labs perform for you. For instance, a BAC-T test has to be on test within 30 hours of collection. Okay, not sure how many knew that. However, if you're saying that you collected at 9:05 a.m. today, and then 30 hours later, you bring it into the lab, but the bottle was labeled differently than what you wrote on your chain or something like that, well, the lab's just going to reject your sample. Okay, and that's kind of what it comes down to. So you never want to lie in your chain of custody. You want to make sure that you're writing on your bottle matches what's on your chain and that it's actually the correct data. Okay, just keep that in mind. And if you do have an issue with your data, contact your CAC. Right, you can find them under the compliance tab on our azdeq.gov website. Under compliance, you'll see the CACs. Okay. All right, here's a case study. This one was kind of sad. So, two certified operators, they knowingly, they went out and do their route to go collect BAC-T samples for the system they were working at, a pretty large utility, and they knowingly were collecting BAC-T samples um, at the wrong location, right? And I say location, what I mean is they were each going out independently to one spot and filling up all their bottles for the day. Okay, this actually went on for 9 months. 9 months. And again, there was little oversight. Nobody realized that these certified, trusted employees were doing this. Okay, there was no reason to think that they were doing this. They were going out in the morning, coming back in the afternoon. They had the correct number of samples. Their chain of custody indicated that they were going to these sites at certain times. Everything on the surface appeared normal. Well, what happened was some samples came back positive, and upon further investigation of where the samples were collected just to confirm. Um, it came up that the GPS in the vehicles showed these operators never went to these sites, so they weren't actually protecting public health. They weren't actually collecting the back T samples. Um, but what happened here was the operators, well, one of them was training the other, and of course the first one he trained the other one on bad habits, right? Illegal activity, unethical activity, and they claimed that they were shown that way too. So it was really a lot of finger pointing that went on. They did admit to doing this. Um, so the water system was issued on this monitoring violations. The residents were put at risk. If you could imagine 9 months of not knowing the bacteriological water quality of their system, all because these two guys decided to act unethically and illegally. So yes, their certs were both revoked, and when reached out to ensure they got our notification, the response was, "Yeah, I did it. I'm not going to appeal," and that was it. And this is an egregious act. We never want this to see this. The system that happened at are now on a little bit higher alert, so they understand what to look for and how to hold their folks accountable. So next case study, this individual was again, they did not have the lab submit results directly to ADEQ. Instead, they had the results come to them, and then they were altering the PDFs, okay, to show that, and this is true case studies, that the total coliform results were coming back absent instead of present. Okay, because in 13 cases throughout 1 year, we went back 1 year and looked at this data. In 13 cases, this individual had altered total coliform present data to show total coliform absent and submitted it to us. They put, if I remember correctly, it was 60,000 people that were served under this individual's operator certification. They operated this many systems. They put that many people at risk by having a known total coliform present and not following the correct standards, which is, go do resampling, you pinpoint the reason for the total coliform, you take corrective actions, etc. Maybe public notice if you have to, boil water advisory. None of that happened because this individual lied. They lied to us. They lied to the systems they worked for. They lied to the people they served. Okay. This happened again. We went back 12 months and we looked at all the data this person had submitted, and we got the actual data from the laboratory. They worked with us directly, and we looked at all the sample results that were submitted, and we found that many discrepancies. So one of these systems, after again 12 months this went on, at the 13th month, one of the systems got an E. coli positive in their storage tank, and they found it, and they had fired this operator since, and they found E. coli positive. So again, folks, there are consequences when you decide not to protect public health. Okay. Yeah, this person did go to jail and had a fine, pretty heavy fine, and of course, search revoked. All right, I'm running short on time, so this individual submitted fraudulent information to obtain certification. It was the most bizarre situation that we've seen. We discovered it through our audit process, and we were able to work with them, and we did revoke certs eventually. But then they popped up again years later. They stole someone's identity, certified operator's identity, and used that to gain employment. And when that was discovered, as it turned out, this individual had done the same thing in Colorado. And so they kind of had the right of first refusal, as it were. So she was actually extradited to Colorado for committing the same crime there. Okay, true case studies here. So I'm gonna skip through some of the dilemmas that you've had. Okay, the thing is, you have the wrong answer here, but you decide to do the right thing. Okay, and most of the time, proper communication with ADEQ will keep you out of hot water. It'll keep you and the public safe. Okay. The key is, don't panic. Talk to us. Okay, we can help you. In all these situations, the consequences where public safety was compromised, search were revoked or suspended, people lost employment, fines were levied, and some people went to prison. So just keep all that in mind, okay? Uh, it's all about integrity, and it all rests on you. Make good choices, be transparent, honest, and forthcoming. Own up to your actions, right? Act in a way that is right, even if you think no one is looking, okay? In the long run, it really does take less effort to just follow policy than to find clever ways around it. So, and if you suspect someone is engaging in improper activities, notify your direct supervisor, okay? Document it. These are the things that eventually will be found out, because they always do. Um, but combat ethical issues, okay? And it all starts with you. Don't assume that if someone else is doing something, that it's okay. Ask questions, be transparent. It's okay to make a mistake. It's not okay to hide that mistakes. So please, that just as you move forward in your careers, if you see something that looks a little odd, chances are it is. So anyway, if you have any questions, you can view this presentation yourself up on our website. It's also on our YouTube channel. It will be. If you need anything from me, you have my contact information here. And you can also reach me through the operator certification email or through the 100 number. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jason. And like I said, apologies for any audio issues. Jason, if we can get a quick question answered. If an individual is taking drinking water compliance or non-compliant samples, are they required to be a certified operator?
That's a really good question. We get that a lot. No, they are not. Okay, so it's a reasonable, trained individual can be the one taking samples, taking and collecting samples. And that is fine. That is perfectly fine. They should be under the direction and guidance of a supervisor or a certified operator, someone who knows what is required for the sampling, but you do not need to be certified to collect samples.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jason. And if there are any more questions for Jason or any of the presentations, we'll still have 10 minutes at the end of this webinar. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the Consumer Confidence Reports with Bailey Gibbons. Bailey, are you available? Bailey, are you on right now? Perfect, screen's good. If you are talking, we cannot hear you though.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Definitely, go ahead.
Oh, all right. Something changed on my thing. Clicked some buttons. We're good to go. All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Bailey Gibbons. I'm a compliance assistance coordinator in ADEQ's Drinking Water Monitoring and Protection Unit. I cover mainly water systems in Yuma and La Paz counties, as well as some others throughout the state. I'm also our Consumer Confidence Report Rule Specialist. So I'll be going through this presentation today with an emphasis on some of the changes that have come down from the EPA now. They have not been published yet, but they have been mostly finalized and will be effective in 2027. So this presentation will cover a lot of the changes coming. Right, so just to reemphasize, these changes are going to be enforceable as of 2027. So we do have a little bit of time to meet the new requirements, but I think it's going to be an easier transition, especially because some of the CCR rule revisions are pretty easily inserted into our current template. We'll try to make an easier transition for all of our water systems to get into compliance with the rule revisions. All right, so real briefly, this rule applies to community water systems. Only systems that have been active for the entire previous calendar year or the year covered by the report. So reports, for those of you who aren't very familiar with CCRs, are due the following year, but they cover an entire calendar year. So if you're working for a water system that was activated mid-year, Your first annual report won't be due until you've been active for an entire calendar year. The CCR rule also applies to water systems, community water systems that buy their water from another system, also known as consecutive connections, or systems that sell water to another system or wholesale systems. And there are some exceptions to that we'll go over. And just real briefly, an overview, the community water system is a public water system that serves at least 15 service connections. And here's the difference with community, used by year-round residents, or regularly serves at least 25 year-round residents. So they don't have to physically be at that residence 365 days a year, but it does need to be their primary residence. So we'll go through a couple of the other things. Just a refresher on system classification. Your system is classified based on who's there and how often they're drinking that water. So community water systems, as we went through, serve 25 or more of the same people year round, or that's their primary residence. So neighborhoods, things like that. Non-transient, non-community systems, those are going to be things like your hospitals, schools, factories, where you have a large number of employees or people that are drinking the water frequently, but they don't live there. It's not their primary residence, and they're drinking that water for at least 6 months out of the year. And then finally, transient non-community systems. That's going to cover things like gas stations, restaurants, campgrounds, where there are different people drinking that water all year round. You might have a few employees, but if you're not meeting that threshold of the same 25 or more non-resident people for 6 or more months, you're probably falling into that transient non-community category. And if there's a change at your water system, then you need to report that to ADEQ, and your system may be reclassified to be appropriately scheduled for their sampling. All right, so requirements specifically for wholesale systems or systems selling their water to another water system. I've gone through 2 different scenarios. One is the wholesale system has customers of their own and sells water to another water system or water systems. In that case, the wholesale system is also considered a community water system, and they need to issue their own CCR. They also need to provide all of its water quality data and violations to the systems it sells water to so that they can properly and accurately report on their CCR. If the wholesale system doesn't have any other customers other than other public water systems, then they're not required to issue their own CCR, but they do still need to provide their water quality data and violations to their buying systems, especially if those systems are community systems that need to be able to report a CCR of their own. At the bottom, this is just for the EPA rule reference, and they're not required to send the CCR formatted to these buying systems, but they need to provide all of the relevant information to the purchaser. So that is up to the wholesale system how they'd like to present that information, if they'd like it to be formatted already into a CCR or just the raw data. Okay, so some due dates specifically for wholesale systems. By April 1st of every year, they need to provide all of that data for the CCR to the community buyer water systems. This date can be different if it's mutually agreed upon by both the buying and selling systems. But in general, April 1st, unless otherwise noted, is that date to get your data to those systems. By July 1st, if you are a wholesale system with your own customers and you're considered a community water system of your own, July 1st is the deadline for everybody to send in their CCR to ADEQ and make sure it's delivered to your customers by that date. I've marked all the changes that are coming in 2027 with this little icon and in red just to pop out a little bit more. But now, October 1st, there's going to be a second CCR due annually for some systems. And so wholesale systems need to provide additional CCR data for the current year to any of the buying systems serving over 10,000 people. So you'd need to send in all of your data for the previous year by April 1st, and then all of your data for the current year by October 1st. All right, so for all of you who are not part of a wholesale system, this is the part that applies to everybody, every community system. July 1st is the CCR due date. That's not changing, July 1st or before. And the CCR covers the entire previous calendar year. So really you could do your CCR as early as January or February if you wanted to get started on it early. October 1st used to be the date that you had to turn in your mailing certification form or mailing waiver form to ADEQ, and I'll go over that in just a minute. That's going to be changing. It's now going to be in line with our public notice rule where you have 10 days after issuing the CCR to send in that certification form or waiver form. Most of our systems turn in the copy of their CCR and their mailing form or waiver form at the same time to us, just to keep it easy. But the rule before it was revised did give systems 90 days to get that form in. So that will be changing and enforceable as of 2027. And then here's a big one. It will be affecting systems that serve over 10,000 people. They're going to be required to redeliver the previous CCR with any current year updates for violations or lead action level exceedances by December 31st of that year. So that second CCR will be due, and I'll go over that in just a bit. All right, so the second report requirement, for the most part, is just going to be reissuing the previous report that you sent out. So I put in some dates for an example here. But you're, say, doing a 2026 CCR or a consumer confidence report covering everything that happened in 2026. That's not due to be distributed until July 1st of 2027. So it's covering the previous year. But then between the date that you issue that and December 31st of that year, if you had any violations or lead action level exceedances during that calendar year, during 2027, then you would need to include those as an update with your report. If you didn't have any violations during that year or any lead action level exceedances, you just reissue that same CCR that you sent out in July. Right, so delivery requirements are separated out by population. So for systems that serve less than 10,000 people, you do have the option to fill out a mailing waiver form. If you fall in that 500 to 10,000 category, there are a few additional requirements if you're choosing not to mail or email out the CCR to each of your customers. But you do have that option. You're not required to mail out the CCR. It is always an option, and a great option, in my opinion, to give your customers, the information that they need. If you have a system that serves 10,000 or more people, you must mail or email or directly deliver the CCR to all of your customers. And as of 2027, you will have that twice per year requirement. And previously, if you served over 100,000 people, you were also required to post your CCR on the internet. That will be changing to 50,000 or more people. A lot of our systems that fall in this population range are already posting their CCRs on the internet. The internet's becoming a lot more accessible and affordable since this rule was written in 1998. All right, so some direct delivery options. We do allow the CCR to be mailed or emailed or hand delivered to customers. So mailed or directly delivered, it has been interpreted by the EPA and by ADEQ to include email as a form of direct delivery. You can either print it or email it in full, You can send a letter or flyer or bill out that includes a direct link to it posted online. Or you can, if you're using a mailing waiver, you can send a letter or flyer out through mail or email to customers notifying them that the CCR will not be sent out, but give those customers instructions on how they can request a copy, including a paper copy. If you have a small enough system and it makes more sense to hand deliver the CCR to each of your customers, that is a direct delivery option available to you. Regardless of size, all customers have to be given information on how they can request a paper copy of the CCR if they're not automatically being delivered one or given one. And then lastly, if you're not mailing or emailing the entire CCR, if you're sending a link or something like that, you need to include a message encouraging readership. So you need to let them know what that link goes to and encourage them to visit it. You can't just paste it at the bottom of the bill. The URL must be short and it must go directly to the report. If you go in to Google, there's free things that shorten URLs. You can make sure that you have a short, direct URL, nothing with a ton of crazy numbers and symbols. And the font must be clearly readable and clearly readable size. So you can't tuck it in the footnotes of your bill. It needs to be at least as large as the largest font used on that message or flyer, whatever that may be. And I should note that a lot of systems will have emails for, a portion of their customers, or a portion of their customers have opted in to email. You can mix and match as long as you send it to all of your customers and note how you did it. You can send some through email, some through mail, whatever works for you. We're just trying to get that CCR out to all of the customers as efficiently as possible. So another requirement, and this is for all systems, regardless of if you're mailing the CCR out or not, or regardless of your size, must make a good faith effort to reach customers who do not get a water bill. So customers living in apartment complexes, for instance, or folks that are living in places or drinking water from places that do not get a water bill, you can we have a whole list of ideas, but some would be posting it to social media or a website, publishing the CCR in a newspaper, leaving copies at your local community center, posting some on a community bulletin board. You can send multiple copies out to the billed customer, like sending a stack of CCRs out to the apartment complex that you bill. And one of the CCR rule revisions is stressing that if there are a lot of non-bill paying customers, the system should be making additional efforts to reach those non-bill paying customers. And if they're aware that those bill paying customers might not have access to electronic forms, they need to use at least one non-electronic form. If you know that not a lot of the folks in your area have computers or internet access, consider posting things or dropping them off at a community center, local hotspots in your area. All right, so those mailing waivers and mailing certification forms. I know they're bumping it from 90 days to 10 days to get this out after your CCR, but both of these are 1 page long. This is exactly what they look like. And if you're using the mailing waiver form, you check off, depending on the size of the system you have, that you have done all of the requirements and you are signing this legal document certifying that this is how the CCR was sent out or what was done to reach non-bill paying customers. The mailing certification form does have all those options of good faith efforts used to reach non-bill paying customers. It's great to get ideas on what you might be able to do. Just check off all that apply and use other if you need to do that. And if you have any questions about how to fill that out, please reach out to us. But note that this just needs to be signed by somebody who has knowledge of how the CCR was actually distributed and is certifying that this is how it was done. All right, I'm not going to get too deep into the content of a CCR report today because we've gone through a lot of it before in previous trainings, But ADEQ does have a template that provides all of the required sections, all of the required text based on the rule, and we will be updating this template to reflect the rule changes coming down the line. It's not a required template, but it is very helpful, especially as a guide. If you want to use your own template, you can look at the ADEQ template and see all of the sections and make sure that you're checking off each bit that you need to have in there. There's also a Word version available, so you can use our template and delete out any non-applicable sections. I think our template is about 8 pages, and that includes every contaminant that could have been detected, so you can really delete out everything that was non-detect. And you can find that on our website under Forms. So the main sections of a CCR, coming down the line from the CCR rule revisions, they're going to be requiring a summary section at the beginning. It's going to include a lot of things that are already required in a CCR, so it's not going to be too in-depth. But then the rest of the CCR should have contact information, list your water source and source assessment if there was one done, a list of definitions for drinking water contaminants, things like MCL, EPA provided definitions. And then I've highlighted the 2 that really change year to year, and that's the detected contaminants section, so any regulated or UCMR program or PFAS sampling detected contaminants, so you don't need to include anything that was tested for and not detected. If you monitored for cryptosporidium or radon. And then the compliance or violations section, you need to be including all mist monitoring, all MCL violations, all treatment technique violations. This also includes late data. If you're sending in late data, late reporting of water quality data does need to be reported on the CCR. And then if your system's operating under a variance or exemption, you need to list that. I don't think that applies to any of our systems in Arizona currently. And then some prescribed health effects statement or information. So mainly there's a lead statement that is required by the EPA to be in there regardless. A nitrate statement if your system had detects of nitrate above 5 parts per million. An arsenic statement if your system had any detects of arsenic. And a vulnerable populations statement discussing how some people with compromised immune systems might be more sensitive. And these are all EPA provided statements. So you just take them right off of our template and plug them in. So let's go through the summary section a little bit. You already are required to list water system contact information. Now you'll just bump it up into the summary. You don't need to repeat it twice. A brief overview of compliance information in the report. So if your system had no violations for the year, you can write that. Or if you did, you can give a brief overview that that's something that users should be looking out for in the report. How to request a paper copy if it's been issued electronically. That's already a requirement, but that should be in the summary. Translation contact information, or how to request a translated report. So we already require some information on other languages and translation assistance. The rule revision is just going to get a little bit more in depth where they're requiring specific contact information to be provided. And then if you are using the CCR to issue public notices, that's something we do allow for Tier 3 public notices to be included in the report. You need to let users know that that's going to be in the report. Often public notices are put at the very end of the report. Sometimes these can be very lengthy documents and people might not read it all the way through. So you need to identify in the summary section that public notices are included. And then standard language to encourage sharing the report, especially with those who might not get a bill. That's already a requirement. We just ask that it now goes up at the top in the summary section. Right, so a note on the language information. This is already a CCR requirement that for any systems with large populations of non-English speaking customers, you include a statement in the appropriate language or languages spoken in that area about the CCR importance and how to obtain translation assistance. Currently, a lot of our systems use a statement just like this, saying this report contains very important information about the water you drink. translate it or speak with someone who understands it well. Starting in 2027, it's going to be enforced that specific contact information is provided for systems to obtain translation assistance or translated reports. And larger systems are also going to be required to come up with a plan on how they're going to better reach their customers that speak a language other than English at home. Just a few final notes on some other revisions coming down the line. Detected contaminants were previously required to be reported only in table format. Now the EPA is going to be allowing other formats to be used to describe detected contaminants. So infographics or something else that you think of, that as long as it is understandable, not misleading, and easily viewable by the reader. Lead information, there's going to be some additional requirements there where systems need to describe any corrosion control efforts being used at their system. The EPA is still finalizing some language that they want used for those health effects statements as well. And some additional definitions are coming out, things like definitions for herbicides and pesticides, and some edited language for some of the other definitions. Those are still being finalized. We will definitely update our ADEQ provided template when we have that information as well. All right, just a final note. We encourage our team of CACs or compliance assistance coordinators. We review CCRs before the due date. You can send them in directly to the CCR or CAC assigned to your county. You can also send them to our generic CCR rule at azdeq inbox. But we highly encourage water systems and operators to send us draft CCRs before sending them out. Send them to us early. We still have time in this next month before CCRs are due for this year. But we do ask that you give us at least a week or so to review. We have several hundred that need to be reviewed each year. And if you can ask us any specific questions before sending the draft, we might be able to answer those rather than sending in a half-done CCR draft. Check Drinking Water Watch for all violations that were issued, even if they have been returned to compliance. So look for everything that was issued or occurred in the past calendar year. Also, review your previous year's CCR. Public water systems are required to keep them for 3 years for record keeping. But if for some reason something's happened, ownership has changed hands, you can't seem to find last year's CCR, reach out to us. We have them on file as well. And you can usually use your previous year's CCR as a template. As I said, mainly the violations section and detected contaminants section are the only ones that change much. So you can really get a jump start on that report by using your previous year's report as a template. Review your calculations. Make sure if you're required to list a running annual average, so anything that's sampled quarterly, that you are listing that, or you're listing the highest level if you're sampling something annually. And check your units. Our provided template has already converted everything that needs to be converted from parts per million to parts per billion to be in compliance with the CCR's requirement that all MCLs are listed in value greater than 1 where possible. So these are my tips for reviewing your own CCR before you complete it, but please send in your draft to us as early as you can, because if you send out a CCR with significant errors and you send us the final version on July 1st and there are significant errors, but you've already mailed it out, you will be required to send it out again with revisions to your customers. So we want to save you time and certainly money and not waste a mailing with some inaccurate CCRs. So we are here to help. We are happy to help. It's especially easy if you're using the ADEQ provided template. Often our CACs will just make the changes for you and send them back for your review. So please reach out to us if you have any questions. And here is, if you have your compliance assistance coordinator that you work with regularly for your county, you can email them You can also email our CCR rule at azdeq.gov, and that rule inbox is monitored by our team, and we're happy to help you with generic questions or reviewing CCRs. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much, Bailey. We have a few questions for you here. Are federally owned transient non-community public water systems required to publish CCRs?
No, transient non-community systems are not required to issue CCRs.
Thank you. Do we have to provide a translated written report on request, or is audio support to interpret the read report okay?
Currently, the EPA has left that requirement open, so it just requires that you are able to provide translation assistance. So if you're able to translate something via audio, if you can provide a phone number to call in and let folks know that that's the assistance they'll be able to receive. I think that sounds great. I'm still looking into this. There's some requirements on ADEQ's side to be able to provide technical assistance as well. So we're looking into what we might be able to provide translation-wise.
Thank you, Bailey. And last question, do you have to include in the CCR all contaminants tested or only the ones detected?
Only the ones detected. I encourage, you're actually required to keep, if you choose to list any non-detects, you need to keep them separate from the detects so it's not confusing. I usually suggest to my systems, if you spend a lot of time and money testing for a lot of contaminants that aren't detected, I usually suggest adding a little text blurb that says, we tested for an additional 61 contaminants and all were found non-detect, or something along those lines, if you'd like to give your system credit for how much sampling they're actually doing and how many non-detects you have versus detects.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Bailey. And if you have further questions, we can answer them at the end. Also, we'll post all presenters' contact information at the end for further follow-up.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move on to certification management. Let me make sure I'm on the right screen here. All right. If anyone was able to attend during the AZ Water Conference, this is just a repeat of that topic. Please stay tuned still for a refresher, as certification period and PDHs during renewal can be a touchy subject for a lot of operators. Let's see here. All right. And Bram, if you can monitor for questions, I'll be focused on the presentation. All right, just for the flow of this presentation, we're going to be covering a large volume of information in a very short period of time. So please feel free to ask questions. If we don't get to those questions today, please reach out to me or the OpScert program for clarification. We're going to go over a bit of the certification management requirements, what a certification period is, the factors that can determine your certification period, how to apply PDHs for your renewals, and then we'll get to the overall gist. All right, so you all know this. If you're certified, you already know. A certified individual is someone who has a certificate issued by ADEQ in one of the 4 classifications: water, wastewater treatment, water distribution, and wastewater collections. All water and wastewater facilities are required to have an operator in direct responsible charge who's certified at or above the grade of their system. We pull all of our rules from the Arizona Administrative Code, Title 18, Chapter 5, Article 1, which dictates not only the requirements for the operator, but the system owner, and then maintaining your certifications. Certification management, we understand, can get quite a bit tricky. Some of you are balancing multiple systems, training, and then on top of that, you need to maintain your own certifications by passing examinations, getting ready for promotions, earning your PDHs. applying for reciprocity, making sure you have the money to pay for your certification fees, of course. But it seems like the most common issue, I should say, for operators is when it comes to renewal. And it's nothing that, it's nothing that we want to say, like, don't come to us when you come to the renewal, but we do want to make sure you understand how your PDHs fall. Because oftentimes we are asked, how come my PDHs will not apply to this certification? How come it will only apply to this one? Well, we need to talk about certification period at that point. All right, understanding your certification period. By definition, your certification period is the time between the effective and the expiration date of each of your certifications. You can have multiple certification periods depending on when you last upgraded and when you last renewed. Also, when you add a new certification, that can also change your certification period. Certification period may differ between classes like your water treatment, your water distribution, your wastewater certifications, but that does depend. If you test in one day, say a water treatment one and a wastewater treatment one, and you pass both exams, take one at 8 a.m. and you take another at 1 p.m. in another location, it is very possible for both of those certs to have the same certification period, since your effective period is technically your exam date until your next renewal. If you want to think about certification period on a growth scale, you can look at this little chart I have here. Your grade 1 water treatment has its own certification period until you renew or upgrade, and then you're going to your grade 2. That starts a whole new certification period for a cert. Let's look at a few live examples here. For the top example here, this is from our actual portal from another operator. Of course, we won't share names, but we just take them for examples. Here we have a operator at the top who has 4 different certification periods, not because they have 4 different certifications, but because they have, where's my laser? But because they have different effective periods here. And while 3 of these have the same expiration date, if you have different effective dates, this means your PDHs are going to apply differently to each of these certifications. Versus this operator here at the bottom that has 1 certification period. Even though they have 2 certifications, their effective date and their expiration date is the same. This means any PDHs that fall between August 5th of 2022 and August 31st of 2025 will apply to this operator's certs, which means this operator here will only need to earn 30 PDHs, while the operator at the top may need to earn more. When I asked you the question earlier about the different certification periods, many of you did answer correctly. A few of you were a bit off, but this is the point of the presentation. All right, and that's just those arrows letting you know 4 certification periods for the example at the top and 1 certification period for the example at the bottom. All right, so this next slide might require a bit of audience participation. Just viewing the top example here, 4 certifications, one date of 2/15/2024 all the way to April 30th of 2027. How many certification periods do you believe this operator has? You can go ahead and put that at in the chat. Perfect. All right, very good. So for this operator here, there is only 1 certification period. And I did see a few questions. The top example, do you need 120 PDHs? No. And I'll go ahead and explain why here. Like I said, your PDHs are required per certification period, not per certification. All right. Now we have this example here at the bottom. Feel free to type in the chat. How many certification periods do you see for this example here? 1 cert starts August 2nd. 2022 and all the way to January 31st. They all have the same expiration date. Okay. All right. All right, this one's a bit of a mixed bag, this is fine. This operator technically has 2 certification periods. The first one, the collection's effective date is different. This one started way earlier than the second group here. This operator is going to have to consider when they earn their PDHs for the PDHs to apply to all the certs, or if they're going to only be applying certs to one certification period or the other. Once again, you do not need PDHs per certification, just certification period. Just a brief reminder, you're all here to earn these PDHs. This is the definition. If you're involved in a participation in an organized educational activity related to engineering, biological, chemical sciences, or technical related technical scientific discipline or operations management, you are earning PDHs. By Arizona code, you do need to earn a minimum of 30 PDHs per certification period. Oh, I feel like I'm missing a slide here. That's okay here. So factors that will impact your certification period. The renewals and the upgrades. Just a brief definition on the renewals versus the upgrades. Upgrades, you are renewing pretty much, upgrades for the top, this is renewals. You are pretty much keeping the same certification and same grade throughout its certification period. If it expired in 2020, you renew it, it's going to expire in 2023. You did not test up, you're going to renew it again. Upgrades are when you're going from one grade to the next, you're going 1, 2, 3, and that is for each of your classifications of certification. You do need PDHs for the grade 1 versus renewals, for the upgrades. For the renewals, you need PDHs. Upgrades, you do not. Let's get a bit more into the detail of upgrades and renewals. Upgrades can be done after a year of holding your lower grade or with early exam approval. You do not need PDHs, and there is a certification fee difference. For the renewals, the inactivation periods begins after your 90-day grace period, which is the end of after 90 days after your expiration date. You renew every 3 years, unless you chose to align, of course. Your certification will have less than 3 years of a certification period. And then you'll have to get a minimum of 30 PDHs, including that renewal fee. So please keep in mind when you're upgrading and renewing, your certification period will change. Common alignment is another feature, the third feature that will dictate the certification period that's going to be set for your cert. With common alignment, we have allowed this for the operators so that they can make all of their certifications pretty much have the same certification period. When you first get your new cert, you'll have the option, if you have more than one, you'll have the option to keep the expiration date of your existing certification. This means your new cert will either take on one of your cert's expiration dates, you do have a choice, or you can decline the option altogether, and that cert will have a full 3-year certification period. But you do need to consider this option very carefully, because as this common alignment itself is also often what will kind of disrupt how your PDHs will flow for renewal. So a few pros, just to review, a cheaper renewal. The first time, like I said, when you choose to align and your first certification, your newest one has less than a 3-year term, the renewal will be cheaper, but you will have, like I said, less time for that cert. That means you have less time to earn those PDHs. PDHs can apply easily to all certifications after the first renewal. So now your expiration dates are all the same. After that final renewal, you'll have the same effective and expiration dates for all certifications, given that you do not upgrade. A few cons, yes, a shorter certification period, which does mean you have a shorter amount of time to earn PDHs for those certifications. And then if your only existing certification expires within 6 months, you will not have the option to align. Earning 30 PDHs in less than 6 months can be difficult for many operators. Even though we do our best to offer free PDHs for you here, We understand that externally, that might be harder for some operators to get to training. This is definitely something to consider, especially if you're going to be a 4x4 or if you're just going for 4s. Do not miss out on the opportunity to align, because if your first grade 4 is less than 6 months, more than 6 months from expiring from your new grade 4, and you choose not to align, you will pretty much have 2 new certification periods and have to pay full price renewal for both of those grade 4s. So just a quick refresh on the common alignment. Please consider your plan before you align. Your new certification is the only certification, if you align, that will change in dates. Your existing ones will not until their renewal. If you plan to upgrade every year, decline the alignment option. Give yourself time to test for that cert. And if you're not sure you'll be able to get the 30 PDHs, whether it's 6 months or 2 years, do not accept the alignment option. And after the portal enhancements of 2023, since we're giving more instruction and direction on how to choose your common alignment, we'll only reverse the decisions under special circumstances, please. All right, so applying your PDHs. So where in the rule? Is this new? Is this always been, has it always been this way? What do you mean? I thought it was 30 PDHs per certification. This has actually been in rule since December 31st of 2008. That is a very dedicated individual working on New Year's Eve or group, but they put this rule out on that day. And yes, this is in section 107B for your renewals. Completion of 30 PDHs during a certification period. Notice they didn't say per certification. If an operator holds multiple certification, the operator may apply required PDHs to all certifications if the PDHs are required within the applicable certification period. This is in rule, and this is how our portal works. It's just been a bit more enforced, and I know some people have said, hey, in the past I can do this and I can do that, but it did depend on your circumstances then. If you were continually upgrading, you didn't need PDHs at the time, and that was pretty much the case for a lot of people who came in with the same question of why do I need PDHs during this period when I had 30 during this time. All right, organizing PDHs, and I do see some questions coming in. I'll get to them at the end. Organizing your PDHs, you do need to consider all of your certification periods and the time frame from effective to expiration. The best way to get out of a situation like this operator here, who personally, they were just trying to go for 4x4s through examination or just waiting for a year. Best situation is just to consider your dates or to continuously upgrade. Opt in for common alignment when you can if you want to avoid paying full price per certification for your renewals. So let's get into a few visual examples. This operator here has one certification period, and we can tell this because one effective date, one expiration date for all 4 certifications. Every training that this operator earns applies to each of their certifications because the training was completed during the active time of that certification. So the AZ Water Conference, say a fire flow training, backflow testing, record keeping, all of these PDHs earned will apply to all 4. This operator most likely will only have to earn 30 PDHs minimum to renew. But also we can see this operator's a grade 2. Maybe they don't want to go any higher, but they want to keep going up to the next grade. At that point, then your certification periods will start to change. Here we have an operator with a W4 and a D4, and if you aren't privy on the acronyms, this is a wastewater treatment grade 4 and a distribution grade 4. If you see a T, that's the treatment, water treatment grade 4, or whatever number comes after. And then if you see a C, that is the collection wastewater certification. So if here in the wastewater 4, let's just say it was earned January 1st of 2023, highly unlikely that there was some testing on a new year, but just play along. This operator here, they start earning PDHs while their W4 is active. The D4 has not been active yet. It's still a year out. That biosolid waste management training will only apply to the W4. They completed some math training with, say, ADEQ. One day before they earned their D4, these PDHs still only apply to the W4. The D4 has not become effective yet, does not have an effective date yet. They have not tested and passed. Now the D4 is active at the same time as the W4. Any PDHs earned during this time will apply to both certifications. So now, in this operator's case, they're going to have to make sure that they have at least a minimum of 30 PDHs by the time this D4 expires. Let's say we're going to get a little more complicated. We're adding more certs. You've got different effective dates and different expiration dates. The same principle applies. What's active during the time, that's what the PDH is applied to. This T1 here, Cybersecurity 101, meters and gauges, nutrient removal. So now that the D2 is active during the nutrient removal training, PDHs can apply to both, but notice the C2 is still not active at this time. That nutrient removal will not apply for PDHs for the C2. And now we've got pumps and motor training. All 3 certifications are active at the same time. The PDHs will apply for all 3 certifications. And let's just say the D1 and the D2, they never renew it. They let those lapse. They just want to be a collections operator from now on. Then it's just pretty much simple. It's a one-to-one. All the PDHs earned during the certification period of that one cert will apply. All right, and then this is our last example. We'll get to questions. Looking at 4 certification periods, this operator is definitely trying to be a 4x4, continuously adding new certs, or they're saying, hey, I just want to stick to water certifications. The same information applies as before. A lockout tagout will only apply to one certification that is active during this time, which is the W1, same as the incident command training. Now the C2 and the W1 are active at the same time. They're taking an exam prep for a T4. The T4 has not been passed yet, nor is an effective date. You have not certified with ADEQ. Even if you took this training in preparation for the T4, you cannot apply the PDHs because the T4 certification is not active at this time. Now the T4 is active, PDHs can start applying. Say you went to the tri-state seminar, all 3 of your certifications are active now. So when you're visualizing your certification periods, I'm gonna go through these here. It is best to write out the dates and consider your effective and your expiration time. The best time to earn your 30 PDHs, if you don't want to earn more, is during the time when all of your certifications are active at the same time. So the gist, per the rule, you need a minimum of 30 PDHs per certification period, not per certification. If you have 4 certs, you do not need 130 or 120 PDHs unless they all have different certification periods, and you are unable to get 30 PDHs during the span they're all active. When in doubt, please call or email the OpCert program. We are always here to help you. We don't want to see anyone lose a certification because they couldn't get the PDHs or they didn't understand the alignment option, or they didn't understand the role requirement or the definition of a certification period. So we're here to help you. This is my contact information, but you can always reach out to the OpCert program for any questions. All right, do we have any questions in the chat? All right, looks like we've been answering a few. Is it a website error to align a higher grade cert with a lower grade cert? This shouldn't have been allowed. I've discussed with 2 people at ADEQ and they said they would have it fixed by AT. And this has been going since February. Alignment is not an automated process in the renewal or your upgrades. It is an option you have to select. When you are looking at your summary at the end of a renewal or an upgrade, or adding a new certification, it will say, yes, you chose to align, or it'll say, no, you did not. If you do select the alignment option and then realize 6 months, I do not have time to get the 30 PDHs, in many cases, we will still honor your choice to align. We offer quite a bit of information through this process. We've upgraded the portal quite a bit from 2020 to include enough information for you to be able to make an informed decision. Now, if the portal itself is automatically aligning your certifications, we haven't had that issue come forth to us yet, but if it is, please bring that forth to us. Our IT can work in the background to see exactly what happened, and we can fix that for you. But no, alignment is not an automated thing. It has to be chosen by the operator, the admin at the time when they are adding a new cert or renewing. Okay, now if there were no more questions here, all right. Like I said, feel free to reach out to the offcert program in regards to any sort of questions with the certification period and renewal. All right. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and start our 10-minute break a few minutes early. Please be back by 10:10, and then we will go ahead and pick up with the MSSPs and finish with the Monitor Assistance Program. We'll see you back in 10 minutes. All right, everyone, welcome back. Go ahead and resume here. I know there was a few questions about the presentations today. The handout section is probably not available, or you don't see the specific presentation you're interested in. Please take a picture, a screenshot of this slide here. It'll lead you to all the presentations, including a few handouts. If your camera phone is privy enough, you can also take a picture of the QR code. The camera will scan the text and can take you straight to the site as well. All right, and now we're going to move onward to James. James, are you available?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Already sending screens to you. And I will answer your question, Steve.
Okay, perfect. Hopefully everyone can see my screen now.
Looks good.
Perfect. If there's any questions, feel free to add them into the question chat. I will be pausing a few times throughout this presentation to address any questions that come up. So my name is James Stone. I'm a compliance assistance coordinator for Coconino and Mojave counties in the drinking water side of things. And today, for the next 50 minutes or so, I'm going to talk to you all about microbiological sample siting plans, MSSPs for short. Now, if you're an operator currently working with systems, you probably are very familiar with MSSPs. All active public water systems in the state of Arizona currently do have some sort of approved MSSP on file with the state. So this training, this meeting is mostly going to be about refreshing MSSPs, providing some context and information for any new operators, and then also focusing on ways to go from the minimum requirements of an MSSP and growing it and turning the MSSP into a really strong foundational document that bacteriological sampling can be performed against for your system. So jumping right in, just a quick refresher for the revised total coliform rule and the groundwater rule. As we're all probably pretty familiar, these two rules in the Safe Drinking Water Act are heavily integrated into one another. Broadly speaking, they have the goal of monitoring and identifying possible and actual pathways of contamination and to then remediate them promptly. For RTCR sampling, part of the revised total coliform rule is determining whether or not enough positives have occurred to determine if an assessment needs to be done. Assessments are kind of the remediation, the fixing step of the find and fix start of things. For most of our systems in the state that sample less than 40 samples in a monitoring period, anytime there's one or more positives in a month, that will trigger the need to do an assessment. If you have more than 40 samples in a month, it's a percentage ratio. So once you exceed 5% of positives, then you have to do an assessment. And then of course, anytime you have a confirmed E. coli detection. Part of the RTCR rule is routine samples. Systems are required to take a certain amount of routines in a period. All of those must be taken, irregardless of whether or not there has been a positive already. A good example of that is a system that takes 10 RTCR samples in a period. The first one they sample for in the month comes back positive for E. coli. The other 9 are still due, and then as well as at least that first round of repeats are required. So basically, anytime there's an RTCR positive, a repeat will need to be sampled for, actually 3 repeats to confirm the presence of an issue. And basically, for most systems, it's just the first round of repeats. There's either a positive that triggers an assessment or they're all negative. Once a set of repeats comes back all negative, there's no more repeats required, or there's no more repeats required once a trigger has been hit. A good thing to note, though, is if a set of repeats has been required, like the routine samples, all of the repeats must be taken. So for how many samples a system needs to sample for, that's purely dependent upon your population size. The vast majority of our systems in the state will fall under the 8,500 metric here. So most systems are going to be taking less than 10. It's not until you hit 33,000 or more people that you start having to really worry about your percentage ratio. Now, there are numbers between here. It kind of goes up by 1 every 1,000 until right around here is where you start hitting increases of 10. So the actual rule citation will go through the exact specific requirements, or you can reach out to your compliance assistance coordinator for specific instructions. Now, seasonality, this is something that's covered under the revised total coliform rule. It kind of technically applies to all systems regardless of the revised total coliform rule. This is just where it resides in the rule. So a quick refresher, there's seasonal systems and then there's seasonal sources. Broadly speaking, a seasonal system is a system that shuts down completely, so no water is being served for certain months of the year. Basically, if your system is offline for June, July, August, no sampling is required for those months. That needs to be documented and properly reported to ADEQ preemptively, pretty much. Now, parts of facilities or parts of systems like a well or a certain entry point to the distribution system can also be seasonal. As before, as long as it's documented, sampling is not required from those facilities or at those sources during complete inactivity. So if you have a facility, say a well, that is down for the entirety of June, there is no source water sampling required at that well if there was a trigger. However, if your well was operating for even a single day during the month of June, that sampling would still be required. And importantly, cannot retroactively claim seasonality. It must be documented. At very least, it must be documented as it's happening. So those are just some broad refreshers for the RTCR rule in general. They just provide some good refreshers about context for the MSSP. So once again, MSSP is Microbiological Sample Siting Plan. It basically is the establishing document that denotes for the system and for ADEQ where sampling is going to be occurring. And so basically, samples within the distribution system for the revised total coliform rule. So your routine, your repeats, any additional triggered repeats or routines, they must be representative of water throughout the distribution system. There's a whole bunch of different capacities that can kind of take. Basically, systems can work with ADEQ, operators, owners, people who are on site a whole lot more often than we are, have a much better understanding of the system, and so we work with them to identify what is the best representative sampling locations. Same thing with repeats. It's basically the same process. As I said before, anytime a routine sample is positive, there are 3 repeats that need to be taken. Repeats, we'll get into a little more details about where exactly the repeats can be taken later, but broadly speaking, you need to resample the original positive location and then an upstream and then a downstream location. If there are issues finding these alternative repeat locations, or if there's problems finding these repeat locations, alternatives can be approved. Additional routines you'll hear me talk about. Additional routines apply only to quarterly monitoring systems for the revised total coliform rule. There's only a handful of systems in the state on that. The vast majority are on monthly monitoring and don't need to worry about this additional routine section. Now, the MSSP finally also really covers any triggered groundwater source samples. So that's any wells or sources that are not surface water or are otherwise not treated to a 4-log inactivation standard. 4-log is 99.99% inactivation of viruses. That's kind of documented through our engineering process and would not be required to sample a source with 4-log active on it. As with all plans, MSSPs must be approved by ADEQ before sampling occurs. We do use the locations on the MSSP to verify during our data entry, review, and processing stages. So now we've kind of talked about a quick refresher of what an MSSP is, some broad goals of an MSSP. Beyond just denoting where you're going to be sampling, a good goal of an MSSP is to cover all of your bases. So like have backups, work through conditions that might occur at the system due to unavailable sampling sites or stuff like that. Basically, it should be a document that covers all sampling points and all sampling conditions. It is something that is easy for any representative or sampler to follow, and that it be this living document that is updated and kept current as needed. As was mentioned in an earlier presentation, anyone who is empowered by the system can do sampling. So having a good MSSP that anyone can follow really empowers proper sampling and ensures that if there are any issues with getting sampling done, that someone else can step in and take an emergency sample as needed. So now that we've talked about the goals and quickly what the MSSP is, we'll jump into, broadly speaking, what makes a good sampling location. Ideally, a sampling location for RTCR should be located within a building at a sampling tap, a sink, a water fountain, something that is used mainly for drinking water. So something you put a cup under and get water out of. And these should be locations that are unlikely to change and are accessible whenever the system is in operation. So you'd want to avoid seasonality. So any residence or location that is not always accessible, either due to weather, residents leaving, what have you. Obviously, there are tons of systems out there that don't have a lot of freestanding structures or internal locations at which to sample from. Basically, any sample tap can be used, but we want to try to identify sample taps that are frequently used by residents, customers, visitors, whatever. But at the end of the day, a sample location is better than no sample location. Are there any questions that have come in yet? Before I jump too far into it.
At this time, not so far.
Perfect. So breaking it up a little bit, we'll start talking about identifying good routine locations. Routine sampling, as noted, always occurs once per monitoring period. It's determined by your population. Basically, if you're going to a resident or a business or any sort of internal location, they should be comfortable with regular visits. They should expect you and be otherwise available for sampling times. This middle bullet point is something that comes up a lot. Are systems able to take more sampling than is required? The answer is yes. You may take more than the minimum required if that is a better representative sampling of your distribution system. There's a couple of good scenarios for that if you are a hydraulically separated system. So like you have basically isolated sections of your system that are only ever fed by one source or the other source. It would be good to make sure that's captured. Large dispersed systems, big campgrounds, systems with many miles of piping, that sort of thing, would benefit from taking more than the minimum. Basically, the MSSP is the ultimate determination as what sampling should be accepted. So say a system needs to take 15 RTCR samples, but they elect to, in the MSSP, to take 30. Even though 15 is your minimum, per your MSSP agreement, you've agreed to take 30, so that is what is going to be expected. Basically, as long as the RTCR bacteria sample is taken at an established RTCR location per approved methods, it will be counted towards your compliance determinations. If you have any questions with that, always feel free to reach out to your compliance assistance coordinator. It's something you'll see a lot. You've probably already heard me talk about. Limited service connection systems do have options for alternative locations, things like standpipe systems where there's only one distribution system location, the standpipe itself, ranger stations that have one or two spigots, but potentially hundreds of people, maybe even 1,000 people visiting because they're a high traffic recreational area. Basically, the revised total coliform rule and the groundwater rule as a whole recognize that there are not a lot of systems out there that fit nicely into standard definitions as identified in the Safe Drinking Water Act. So broadly speaking, MSSPs with approval can have all sorts of addendums, modifications, and that sort of thing. It's really the goal is to find a sampling schedule that works best for each system. And that's what we want to ensure happens. So finding your routine locations is probably the most important thing because that's where all your sampling is going to occur guaranteed. Anytime you have a positive, you also need to have repeats identified. Anytime there's a positive, you need to take an upstream, a downstream, and then a resample at the routine location. Per the rule, there must be at least one identified upstream and downstream location within 5 service connections. If that's not possible for whatever reason, alternative locations are approvable. Unlike routine locations, these repeat locations need to be accessible on very short notice. Sampling must occur within 24 hours from when the system learns of a positive. So that's when the lab calls you, the owner, the admin contact. Basically, basically once the system in some capacity has been notified by the lab, or in rare cases by ADEQ of a positive, that starts your 24-hour notice. So it's really critical that any repeat locations take that into consideration, because sometimes you might be having to take a resample on a weekend, early in the morning, that sort of thing. And we'll cover this a little bit more later, but an important thing to point out, that 24 hours is pretty firm. If there are any issues, if it's unsafe for a sample to occur at that location for whatever reason, please call ADEQ ASAP, and we can work with you to figure out a solution. So I will talk a little bit about additional routines for quarterly systems. Once again, if you're not a quarterly monitoring system, this doesn't apply to you. But a quick refresher, if you are on quarterly monitoring, that's sampling once per quarter and then dealing with any repeats. However, if you do have a positive on your routine sample, that does require 3 additional routines be sampled for and tested in the following month. So that is in addition to your normal routine sample. So we will need to, for quarterly systems, need to see a total of 4 routine locations, one being the actual routine, and then 3 being these backup additional routines. Kind of like other repeats, and in general, these additional routines will continue until either they are all negative or an assessment has been triggered. A good thing to remember is that assessments are determined monthly, not per the monitoring period. So even systems on quarterly still do an assessment check monthly. A small aside, if you're a seasonal system who is also on quarterly and have triggered additional routines, say in the month of June, and June also happens to be the month in which you close for the year, you still have to take those additional routines. You don't have to take them in July though. You just have to take them in the month that the system resumes operation. So you have your positive in June, you also close in June. You will need to take those additional routines in October once you've reopened, or whatever month you're opening in. As always, additional alternative locations are approvable. And finally, the last main part of the MSSP is your source water testing. As I mentioned, this isn't really applicable to you if you have a surface water system or otherwise have an active forlogs treatment on that source. All surface water systems by law do have some sort of forlog in activation, so they never need to test their source water sampling. Groundwater wells, groundwater under the direct influence of surface water, that sort of thing. Any sort of groundwater system that has been denoted as needing forlog and has active forlog will also not need to sample the groundwater. However, if for whatever reason in a month your forlog is inactive, it's down for maintenance or whatever, sampling at that source water is then required again. Importantly, sources are only needed to be tested if they were in use at the time of the positive events, mostly applicable to large systems with multiple wells. You're not always running all of your wells at one time. So if you're able to identify those and denote them in the MSSP, ADEQ can easily assess which wells are due and which wells were active. Of course, you're also welcome to let us know when you have a positive, which wells were active. Speaking of wells, some bigger systems or systems in general can have things like well fields that have multiple wells drawing down from the same aquifer, basically the same source of water. If that is the case, we do allow representative sampling of sources. Basically, instead of having to take all 6 well samples at a well field, you can take 1 representative sample. Basically, then if there's any positives there, like an E. coli, we would need to investigate and figure out which of those wells are active or which of those wells are contributing to it. So now we'll take a quick side detour to look at our MSSP template. This is one of 3 we actually have. They are included in that QR code as attachments. It's basically broken up into MSSPs serving 1,000 or fewer people, serving 1,000 or more, or are on quarterly. They're good templates because they you kind of pick for which one your system applies to and fill it out as needed. The nice thing with these templates is they basically contain all of the minimum text required. All of this text down here that's pre-included is the minimum requirements. So pretty much all systems have to do in order to meet a minimum MSSP requirement is to fill out this top section, fill out your sampling locations, answer these kind of questions here if there's additional information provided, if you're doing your default or alternative locations, that sort of thing. And then over here, any source wells that would need to be tested. If it's not applicable to the groundwater rule, you check that sort of thing. So filling it out and not really tweaking the template will get you across the finish line for an acceptable MSSP. But as you can see, minimum does not equal great. We strongly recommend that this is a building off template, especially if your system has uniqueness to it or is otherwise not easy to categorize into one of the easy buckets the Safe Drinking Water Act provides. This template is a great start. So after this, I'm going to jump into talking about getting the best out of an MSSP. So I'll take another quick moment to pause for any questions.
Thank you, James. We have 2 here. What do you do if the lab doesn't take repeat samples on the weekend?
That's a good question. There are not many labs out there that don't take samples on weekend. At the end of the day, a lab is a business. If you need a sample tested, they will test it for you. 9 times out of 10, though, there will be an additional fee involved on a weekend sample or otherwise a rush sample. So if you do have a lab that seriously doesn't take weekend samples, please reach out to ADEQ and we can open up a conversation. As far as I know, pretty much every lab I've talked to will take a weekend sample. The best answer to that question, though, is if at all possible, try to incorporate into an MSSP that sampling is going to occur early in the week, early in the monitoring period. So if there's any issues or the need or worry about a weekend sample, a routine sample taken on a Monday should be able to have its repeat results done by a Friday is kind of the best way to look at it.
Thank you. And then we have one more question here. Do repeat samples for groundwater systems need to include a repeat sample from the wellhead in addition to the upstream, downstream, and original sample point? Let me know if I need to repeat that.
That's a good question. So whenever there's a positive in your distribution system, we do need to see one source water sample for any of those active wells or any source without a 4-log treatment on it. The groundwater rule is only concerned really about E. coli positives. So we're really testing to see if there's E. coli in the well. If there is E. coli in the well, there are other processes involved, basically either doing a confirmation of the well sampling or going straight to remediation. For the groundwater rule, there are 4 prescribed resolutions for E. coli in the well. If those do occur, definitely reach out to your CAC for your county and they will walk you through the next steps. But broadly speaking, there's only one source water sample required unless there's positives for E. coli.
Thank you, James. That concludes the questions at this time.
Perfect. Okay, so jumping into getting the best out of an MSSP. You can guess a lot of these, but be as detailed as needed. Our template is 2 to 3 pages long. If you need to send me an addendum with 10 extra pages on it, I will read through all of them and make sure it's right. There is no limit. The more information you can provide to us, the more detailed you can be, the less likely we'll need to call you or the less likely we'll need to work with you in an emergency to find solutions. So yeah, be as detailed as possible. Try to cover all of your sample scenarios. What I mean about that is while you only need to identify one repeat location for upstream, downstream for each routine, since you are required to be within 5 service connections, you are able to include all 5 up and all 5 downstream locations and give sort of a flow plan saying, hey, we normally sample from location A. If location A isn't available, we can then sample from location B. So kind of have backups and other kind of sample solutions in your pocket in case your standard procedure gets messed up for whatever unpredictable reason. Maps, instructional diagrams, we do need to see some sort of simple flow diagram, source well, storage tanks, distribution system that kind of lays out where things are. If you're able to provide like a Google Earth map with images overlaid over it, that would be very helpful. Any sort of flow diagram that helps make understanding the makeup of the system a bit easier for ADEQ or any system or any operator or employee needing to take a sampling. So yeah, that kind of segues into the next point. Yeah, it's really helpful if you're sick, you're unable for whatever reason to go take the repeats yourself, to know that you have people on staff and a document on staff that is easy to follow, and you can be reasonably assured that that sampling is going to be performed. A big thing is keep current and up to date. Something I notice a lot, we have MSSPs that are from 2018, 2016, that oftentimes predate a lot of the current employees at a facility. That's a pretty good indication that it's time to do a new MSSP, even if it is ultimately the same one. Having a continuously updated and refreshed MSSP helps ensure that we're current, helps ensure that employees are current, helps ensure that the operator's current, kind of helps make sure that we're all on the same page. And then also kind of including indicators or metrics that kind of let a sampler know, hey, you've now triggered an assessment, or you've now triggered into next steps, or you need to take repeats, kind of laying out a standard work, if you will. So next we're going to jump into some examples, try to kind of visualize all of these kind of goals. These examples are going to be largely focused on kind of the smaller system, kind of a limitation of PowerPoint and how much I can display at once. And in general, once systems start getting really big, you start having thousands of residents and needing 40 plus samples, our current templates kind of really don't become good enough. With systems that complicated, we are going to need to start seeing Excel attachments and that sort of thing. But that's where we really defer to the system to develop something that works for them and is readable to us. So diving into some of these examples, this is going to be a pretty basic example to start with. We have just a small system serving under 1,000 people, a nice simple flow diagram here. We've got our source well, a simple storage tank, and then a simple distribution system. So diving in, when you're making an MSSP, you kind of look at this flow and you see, hey, building 3, house 3, whatever you want to call it, this sampling location is right within the middle of the distribution system. So that's going to be my routine location. In general, that's probably the most standard way of finding what is a representative sample. Something sampling from within the either mean residence time, the middle of the system. You're basically looking for something that is otherwise in some capacity in the center of the system. So identifying repeat locations, as the operator, I go to house 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I ask them, hey, if in the event I need to take a repeat, can I come to you? House 1 says yes. House 2 says, well, I'm only here 6 months of the year, and no one was home at house 4 at the time, but house 5 said yes. So, you can go ahead and be like, okay, house 1 and house 5 have committed to being my repeats. They understand that this is potentially something they need to be available for, or at least have access to in emergencies or short notice. So then moving on to the triggered source sampling. Again, this is pretty easy. You have just one well. It's pretty much safe to say that that well is pretty much always active. Storage tanks generally don't store more than a couple of days worth of water. So it's very unlikely that an entire monitoring period will go by without that well being active. So as you can see, we've identified the routine, the repeat, and the triggered source samples. This is the minimum. If this is what we got on an MSSP, it would be approved. However, house 2 and house 4, while maybe not good for constant repeat locations, they could be included as backups. So you would include them on the MSSP. You would say like house 1 and house 5 are the normal repeat locations. However, if house 1 is not available, we will see if house 2 is available. And that's kind of how you would incorporate that into our standard MSSP template and how you could level it up. So taking the example forward a little bit, it's pretty much the same exact system, but this time we have, as you can see, a 4-log treatment. Really, it should be coming after the well. I just didn't have time to update that. But basically, the well has 4-log treatment on it. And so the distribution system routine location remains the same, so does the up and down. But here, a triggered source sampling is no longer required because this 4-log was active. Now, if you are a system with 4-log, it's not part of the RTCR rule, but you do have other monitoring requirements to verify that the process is active. And then once again, 2 and 4 are good backup locations for repeats. Okay, and so this system has now lost the 4-log on it, but it has gained a second well that is seasonal. And the other thing to point out is it now serves more than 1,500. It serves 1,500 people, so they are now required to sample 2 routines in a monitoring period. So this example has 2 kind of twists to it, if you will. So starting off looking at fountains 1 through 5, if you want a good example of what this could be, this would be like a state park or other big recreational facility that doesn't have, you may have the front desk or whatever, the check-in counter, and then a bathroom and a couple of water fountains, and that's about it. So going through, you identify RTCR1. You like fountain 2 because it leaves you room for an up and down, and it also leaves you room to find another RTCR2 location. Found here at fountain 4. Even though fountain 3 would be a bit more representative, we do want to have those 2 routine samples, so we split it out a little bit, and this would be really representative of the system. So fountain 4, you can see here that we've identified the up and downstream locations, and you can see that fountain 3 actually is being used for the downstream and the upstream. That is acceptable. Basically, repeat locations can overlap, and they can even be another routine location if need be. But this kind of illustrates that you can have overlap. You would still need to take 2 samples here, however, but you would just sample it twice. And then looking for the triggered source samples, you can see that well 1 is a year-round source, so that's going to be always included in the triggered source sampling. Well 2 is only in use April through September. So in those months when it's not active, we would not need to see a well sample then. Once again, adding in just some backup locations. For fountain 2, good backup locations would be 4 and 5 for any downstream issues, because again, that's still within the 5 service connections, so all of these could technically be used as repeats. And then the same is true for fountain 4. You have these 2 upstream locations that could also be used in an emergency. And now if for whatever reason fountain 5 or fountain 1 was unavailable, that would be a situation where you would have to contact ADEQ or otherwise have some sort of plan in place. But basically this would cover the vast majority of your situations and cover all of the backups you need. So now instead of expanding, let's contract a little. You got another small groundwater system, but this time you only have 2 sampling points. House 1 and house 2 is probably not a good notion for those, but this would be like a campground, a small recreational outdoor facility that has, a kiosk and a bathroom sort of thing. So here, right away before you even go past finding the routine location, there's not enough locations in the distribution system for repeats. You can see that house 2 here is going to be our downstream repeat. However, there is no upstream distribution system sampling. The only thing left you have is your well. So that this would be a case where we use a term called dual purpose. This is one of the alternate sampling criteria approvals we can issue. Basically, if there's no upstream location for a repeat location, a well can be sampled instead. Now, it's important to note that if a well is being used for a repeat location, that repeat sample does not count for the triggered source, or it does count for the triggered source well location. So even though you're double dipping here, once again, for the well samples, we only need to see the one sample. You wouldn't need to do two here. It would just be the one, and that one well sample would be used to determine your source sample result as well as your upstream location. If you are in a situation like that, definitely make sure you have talked to ADEQ, your compliance assistance coordinator, and you understand what exactly that means. There are definitely some more considerations to be aware of for dual purpose, since you are using one sample for compliance for the repeat and the source well location. E. coli positives can actually trigger multiple things, one for the repeat and then one for the triggered source. So that's just something to be aware of. If you have any questions, yeah, definitely reach out to your compliance assistance coordinator for more information. And then here, yeah, there's no real place for backups. There's only so many places you can sample for. Once again, if sampling becomes impossible or otherwise inaccessible, contact ADEQ immediately and we can work with you for a solution. Okay, the final real example here is what if there's just one sample site, a standpipe system? We have definitely a handful of those out here in the state. A lot of dispersed RV camping sort of thing where people are able to come to a singular location and pay to have water pumped out of a single connection and into their RV or other water receptacle. So here, you've only got one distribution system sample. So pretty much all of your distribution system sampling is going to occur there. Obviously, your routine location is that standpipe. Your repeat locations are also a standpipe. You do have two options for taking repeats. It's either take one sample each day for 3 consecutive days or take one 300 milliliter sample on one day and count that as all 3 of your repeats. And once again, triggered source well remains the same. And then this last example is going to get a bit messy, but this is for quarterly systems. It's worth at least laying out kind of just all the sampling requirements you really need to consider if you are going down that path. So this is a quarterly system, thankfully still serving under 1,000 people. So this would be like a non-community system that has seasonal residents, you know, it's a summer vacation home kind of location. So here, you know, we picked house 3. You could have also picked house 8. There's a couple of arguments to be made for a bunch of these locations, but for whatever reason, we've identified house 3 as the representative RTCR routine location. Once again, we're looking for within 5 service connections. These are both within 5 service connections. So we've identified those. And then you have the triggered source sample at the well. However, as a quarterly system, you're not quite done yet. You still have to consider your additional routines for if and when you have any positives in your original routine sampling. So this is where house 2, house 4, and house 8 get identified as those additional routines that would be sampled for anytime house 3 is positive. And once again, all of the repeats are identified here. Once again, all within 5 service connections. I didn't identify any of the backups here because they get super messy, but basically house 1 through 10 can be used as backups as needed as long as there is some sort of plan or flow included in the MSSP for denoting, hey, we check house 10, then house 9, then house 8, then house 6, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's something to be aware of. The amount of sampling and points you should identify can quickly grow if you move over to quarterly sampling. Some things to remember. as we get to the end of this presentation. Sampling must occur per the current approved MSSP. I've said that a few times now. If you are a big system, so sampling 5 or more, sampling 6 or more in a period, those need to be split up at regular intervals throughout the monitoring period. Once again, that's kind of open to interpretation. You have 15 RT-PCR samples due in a month. You can take 5 in the first week, 5 in the middle weeks, and then 5 at the end, or 7 and 8. There's a bunch of ways you can kind of split it up. You would definitely want to work with your compliance assistance coordinator to verify your plan is acceptable. As mentioned and as addressed in the question, repeats must be taken within 24 hours, weekends included. Essentially, all labs should accept a weekend or a rush sample. Obviously, if a lab is also dealing with staffing issues, that might come into issues. But there are other labs out there. Then there are emergency labs. There are labs out there that openly advertise emergency services. We don't maintain an active list of what labs offer, but you can reach out to labs yourselves and open up those conversations. Kind of teased out this a few times already. We do offer extensions for repeats, but only under very specific conditions. Basically, if it's unsafe for a sampler or the sampler's otherwise prevented access to the system or sample sites, call us immediately. A good example is it's the middle of winter, you're up in Flagstaff, your routine sample comes back positive, but in the last 24 hours, 8 feet of snow has fallen on the system. Call us immediately, leave us a voicemail, an email, let us know you can't get to that sample location, make contact with us in some capacity, and we can either offer an extension or help identify another location within to take that repeat. Basically, as long as ADEQ provides approval, sampling addendums or changes can be approved. And at the end of the day, we want our operators to stay safe. Never risk your life taking a sample. Never put yourself in danger. If it is truly unsafe, call us and we can provide an extension. Broadly speaking, extensions can be granted under those circumstances, and they are granted up until the moment you're able to sample as soon as possible. So basically, as soon as it is safe for you to do so, that is when you have to go take your repeats. As I said, though, that all requires approval. That would need to be done via like email or documented in some capacity with your CAC. So just some final MSSP and sampling notes. Kind of mentioned this earlier, as the number of samples increase, your MSSP complexity does as well. I've seen a few MSSPs for hospitals that provide their own water sources, and they can get very complicated very quick. So it's important to tailor the MSSP layout and form to your needs. We like to see it on our templates, but obviously we, at the end of the day, want systems to have MSSPs that work for them and their representatives and operators. Also, as mentioned, the earlier you can sample in a period, the better, especially if you can sample on a Monday. Labs will have your results back no later than a Wednesday, and if repeats are needed, you can have those results back no later than like Friday night. The last thing is you are required to keep these on site and have them accessible. They are required anytime an inspection comes on site. ADEQ is able to request them whenever. If they are ever determined to be deficient, we can mandate that they be updated as needed. And so yeah, that takes me to the end of the presentation. I'd like to thank you all for attending and open it up to any questions.
Thank you very much, James. We do have one more question here. Is in regards to the small water systems, the service connections, like the tap-offs of the water main. Can you apply these for sampling points within the same building? Let's see. So in small water systems, the service connections, i.e. tap off of the water main, don't apply and can be sample points within the same building. Is this a question? Yeah.
Yeah, broadly speaking, multiple tap sample locations at one service connection are approved. I think the question is kind of in reference to you got a restaurant attached as a service connection, there's the kitchen sink, there's the bathroom sink, there's, you know, the sink that the water comes out of. So there's multiple taps to select from. If those are your only options, those can be approved. We do like to see them dispersed across multiple service connections if possible. But yeah, kind of as I kind of commented on, there's a lot of variability in what systems have. You know, some systems have pure service connections that go to one tap, some go to houses. So that would definitely be something you'd want to verify with your compliance assistance coordinator, but broadly speaking, that is acceptable.
Okay, thank you very much. And there doesn't look to be any more questions to post.
Okay, if that is the case, I do have a few extra slides that I was asked to present on real quick, if we have time. Perfect. So most operators have probably heard, or at least all labs have heard now, data submission is done via the compliance monitoring data portal. Our CMDP compliance monitoring data portal admin has asked that I share this quick note, give operators a quick update, make sure that if you aren't already aware of it, you are at least aware of it now. Broadly speaking, CMDP won't really apply to operators. It's mostly on the lab side. We just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So broadly speaking, CMDP, Compliance Monitoring Data Portal, it's just a new way for operators, labs, systems, whomever to submit data to ADEQ. Right now, we are focusing on getting labs transitioned over to this portal. So basically, instead of a lab sending a DWAR form to ADEQ, they would just use CMDP, and the operators and systems would still receive that lab-specific lab report. It's basically just changing how data is sent into ADEQ. And as I said, for now, it's mostly just towards labs. So the main ask right now is that operators and systems are at least having conversations with their labs, making sure that they are moving towards that CMDP process, and if any issues arise, to reach out to us. So quickly speaking, just some CMDP benefits. As I said, it limits the need for email submissions. It provides that electronic record. It's a whole lot easier. There's a whole lot less points of failure, like was a PDF attached, was it downloaded properly, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's pretty much, there's a lot of benefits to it, and it just streamlines the process. Quickly speaking, CMDP accepts virtually all data currently sampled for. There are some exceptions: surface water treatment, chlorine myrtles, and a few other handfuls will still need to be submitted via DWARs. Your labs will be appraised of that and are working through that now. Yeah, broadly speaking, next steps for you. If you haven't already, contact your labs and confirm their CMDP status. Broadly speaking, the first deadline's July 1st, but the ultimate deadline's the end of the year for labs. If you have any roadblocks with the lab or any other special considerations that need to be addressed, this will be your contact email. And then, as I said, some DWAR forms are currently still required. We are working towards moving everything over. There's just a few roadblocks there. So those are the final slides I had to show, and that is the official end now.
Thank you very much, James. We'll go ahead and move on to monitoring assistance program, but if you have any questions for James, please feel free to reach out to him. As mentioned before, we'll post all of the presenter contact information at the end.
Yes, and one final thing, if you need the most recent list of your CAC, it can be found at this link. You can also Google azdeq Compliance Assistance Coordinators, and it'll be one of the top links for you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, James. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Carling. Carling, are you available?
I'm here.
Perfect. Do you have screen power?
Let's see.
Looks like we're on email.
Okay, wrong screen. Let me switch my screens here. I'll bring this one over here.
That works.
And hold on, give me a moment. There we go. Let's move this out of the way.
Okay, are we ready to start?
You get to go.
All right. So my name is Carly Olson. I am the Monitoring Assistance Program Coordinator at ADEQ. I have been with ADEQ since late 2015. I've been a compliance assistance coordinator, for that whole time. And then in late 2019, I took over the Monitoring Assistance Program as well. Today, I'm going to go over how MAP is running currently, and then after that, I'm going to talk about some changes that we're making to the program and why. So first, let's go over just MAP in general. So Monitoring Assistance Program, for shorthand, we call it MAP. It was developed in the late 90s by Arizona because, to put it bluntly, compliance rates were terrible. They were not good. Systems were not monitoring or were monitoring incorrectly. And so they created this program to assist the small drinking water systems in compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act. So what the program does is I contract with a laboratory who subcontracts with samplers. Those samplers come out to the systems participating in this program, collect samples, not all, but we'll discuss which ones they collect. Those samples are then transported to our contracted laboratory and analyzed, and the laboratory reports are sent to the customers as well as to the state on behalf of the customers. Okay, so MAP is not a fully optional program. It is a requirement by Arizona statute. All community systems and all non-transient, non-community systems who serve less than 10,000 people are required to be in this program. There is some stipulations. So if you're a transient system, obviously you're not included in the program if you serve over 10,000 people, or if you are a fully consecutive connection system and don't have your own source of water, the program also does not apply to you. If you have a system that has over 10,000 people, you can opt into the program and we will gladly take you on. You just have to verify that you will abide by all MAP guidelines, which includes letting our samplers on site to collect those samples. As also, you have to commit to participating in the program for at least 3 years. If you would like to opt in, you just send me an email. So I have the email, there we go. An email to me letting me know you want to opt in. I will then send you a form that you can fill out and sign saying that you will abide by our guidelines and participate for 3 years. And then, let's see, no. Then I will add you to our schedule and you will be sent an invoice, which we'll talk about in a moment. Can I opt out of the program? If you are a community or non-transient, non-community water system serving under 10,000 people, no, it is not an option for you to opt out of the program. By state statute, you are required to participate. There are many benefits to participating, which we'll go over, and it is a benefit to you, both cost benefits, staffing, augmentation benefit. We don't do this to make your lives more difficult, we do it to make your lives easier. If a system is participating in MAP voluntarily, so they serve over 10,000 people and they have opted in, they are able to opt out at any time, or if your system at some point starts serving over 10,000 people, either way, you can send me an email saying I'd like to now opt out of the program, and I will send you that same option form that has a spot of, there's a spot to opt in and a spot to opt out. Once that's done, we'll take you out as of the next calendar year. So what does MAP sample for? MAP samples for contaminants that are required to be taken at the entry point to the distribution system, which ADQ, we love our acronyms, we call that the EPDS sampling tab. We will take what we call baseline monitoring, which includes initial monitoring, routine monitoring schedules and reduced monitoring schedules. So the things that are required to be taken at the EPDS include nitrates and nitrites, asbestos, all of the radionuclides, all of the inorganic chemicals, the volatile organic chemicals, as well as the synthetic organic chemicals. So that is the majority of the requirements. What MAP does not sample for is anything that needs to be sampled within the distribution system. So there are some monitoring requirements in the Safe Drinking Water Act that require samples be taken out where the water is being served, out at the houses or businesses. And those include the revised total coliform rule, lead and copper, and any disinfectant residual or disinfection byproduct rules. Those all have to be taken out in the distribution system following sampling plans. My MAP samplers will only take samples at the EPDS, not out at the houses. So these things that have to be taken in the distribution system, they are the responsibility of the system. So you need an operator anyways, regardless of who's taking your samples, you must have an operator. So if you have an agreement with your operator that they'll take these samples, great. If not, like James said, it doesn't fully matter who takes the samples as long as they are knowledgeable on how to do it properly. MAP does also not cover triggered increased monitoring at this time. So this means you've got a result for one of those contaminants that I mentioned that MAP does take that shows you have to go into triggered increased quarterly monitoring to show us that the system is reliably and consistently below the MCL and therefore doesn't need to be on a schedule. So if you trigger into this monitoring, it's showing the state that there's potentially an issue with a contaminant and we need further testing to determine if that issue is a public health risk or not. So right now, MAP does not cover that. When this happens, you will be informed that your system now has quarterly monitoring for this specific contaminant and you are responsible for taking those quarterly samples. Additionally, if you have installed treatment for a specific contaminant at your system, because there's a contaminant of concern, that contaminant that you're treating for will be placed on quarterly monitoring for the life of the treatment plant. This is also not covered by MAP. And finally, point of use devices. So this is a treatment option, one that is placed at each service connection in the distribution system. And because the treatment is located out in the distribution system, that's where the samples need to be taken. And like we discussed, MAP doesn't take distribution system samples. So these are all still the responsibility of the system to sample these things. Okay, it does cost money to participate in MAP. We do not use government funding or have any funding for this program. Our funding, the systems are funding it themselves. So we are not fully taking away the responsibility of you guys to do the sampling because you do have to pay into the program, but we are doing it for a very cost beneficial price for you. So right as of today, the fee, it's an annual fee and it's $250 per year plus $2.57 for every service connection you have at your system. This fee covers, like we discussed, all the sampling, all the analysis costs, reporting the results to the state as well as you during that calendar year. Because we have so many samples, we get fairly good prices with our contractors, so the fee is beneficial to you. You wouldn't get the prices that we're getting if you went to your own lab just because you wouldn't have as many samples. Quarterly specific. Okay, so we used to invoice all 800 plus MAP systems at the same time each year, but that created some budgeting issues for us. namely the state legislature attempted to sweep our fund a couple times, which, as you can imagine, is not helpful for our program. So to address that issue and mitigate the risk there, in 2021, though everybody is still only getting invoiced one time per year, we have broken up the systems into 4 groups, so each group gets invoiced in a specific quarter of the year. That allows us to still invoice every system once a year, but the money coming in and going out is, there's no peaks and valleys there. It's a more even cash flow, which is helpful for us. That started in 2021, so it should be just old news by now. That's standard procedure. Because MAP is not a money-making operation, it's specifically designed to assist the water systems. We're not trying to make money on this at all. We also have language in our statute that says, should we have leftover money in our fund at the end of the year over a certain amount, that money goes back to the systems. We're not holding on to that. In the past, we've done this by sending out refund checks at the end of the year, but that was also causing some issues in our accounting world. So as of now, we don't issue refund checks anymore. What we do, if there is leftover money that needs to go back, in the next year's invoice will be credited whatever that refund would have been. So you don't have to pay as much in the next year. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say about that. Are there any questions so far? Let's see. Oh, I don't see any in the chat.
None on this end yet.
Okay, perfect. Keep going. So part of the statutes for this program is that once a year, all participating systems will notify us of any changes to their demographic type information. To assist you with this requirement, every year in about mid-May, and this year I sent these out on May 13th, I sent each system an email. It used to be paper in the US mail, but in 2020 we started going to email, which seems to work better. I sent an email that has the water system name and number, who we have as the owner, who we have as the administrative contact and the designated operator, owner contact information, population information, service connection numbers. So I send you what we have in our system right now with the ask that if there has been any changes or if there's anything that needs to be updated, you respond back. And if there's no changes needed, you just respond back with no changes needed. I sent out 827 of them 3 weeks ago, and so far, where did my notes go? Here we go. This morning I checked, we've already received back 59% of those, which is fantastic. There's a month left. These have to be submitted to us every year by July 1st. So if you're still holding on to yours, please look into it and get back to me. And honestly, if I don't hear from the systems by kind of the end of June, I'll send out a reminder as well. But you don't have to wait for the map update card. If you have a change to any type of contact information, any population numbers, service connection numbers, we'll take that information at any time. So you can send it to me at map@azdeq.gov or to your county's compliance assistance coordinator. We will take updated information at any time. We really want our database to have the most updated stuff. It just helps everybody involved. Okay, moving on to scheduling conflicts. So my map samplers will contact, I usually give them the name of the owner because the owner is the one paying and therefore is our customer. But if they can't reach the owner, I can also provide them administrative contact information or operator information. So the map samplers will contact the system, ideally about 10 business days before they come out, but Sometimes it's less than that, and they will try to schedule a mutually beneficial time with you. I have gotten calls previously that say, oh, they called me yesterday and want to come out today. If that works for you and you're available then sure, it doesn't need to be 10 days in advance. And if you're not available then you simply tell them, I'm sorry, I'm not available, and schedule a time that works for both of you. So just because they say they're going to be there tomorrow, if you're not available, then that's fine. Tell them so, and they will schedule something different. If you do schedule something and then all of a sudden some catastrophe happens, the well that they're going to come sample will be down, we just ask that you contact us as soon as possible. Either the map sampler who reached out to you or me, and I can act as the go-between. In that case, we'll reschedule. If you know that an EPDS is going to be down for a while, even if the map samplers haven't contacted you yet, you can contact me, and I encourage you to do so, and let me know, especially if it's something where it's pre-planned and we can put it, it's going to go down in a couple weeks. I can do my best to get the map samplers out there before it goes down to ensure that the samples do get taken, because sometimes things go down, and even though it was supposed to be 3 weeks, it ends up being 7 months. Things happen. So if we can get those samples beforehand to ensure that they get done, that is the preference. If not, or if the map samplers come out to your system and you're unable or unwilling to show them where the EPDS is or give them access, they have a form that they fill out. It's called an Exhibit E. It's called an Exhibit E because it is Exhibit E of our contract. Excuse me. And they fill that out with the contact information for the system, why they were unable to take the sample, and submit it to me. Then once about every other month, I will contact the system. I'll contact you and say, hey, what's going on with this situation? Are we back up and running? Can we come take the samples? Is there an ETA for when it will be back up and running? I just stay in not constant, but in contact with you to determine when the sampling site is available so that we can schedule to come back out and get that done. However, if by the end of the year it's still down, this form that the samplers have filled out and my follow-up status update request, that serves as documentation that MAP did everything in its power to get the come out and get the samples, and were unable to. So if at the end of the year the sample still hasn't been taken, there's an Exhibit E. There will be a missed monitoring violation, but it kind of takes the responsibility off of MAP. We did our best to get there and get those samples for you, but we weren't able to do that. If this happens, and then like last week or two of the year, it finally comes back up, I probably can't get a sampler back out there in time, but what we can do is send you the sample bottles necessary, have somebody at the system fill them up, and then send them back to our contracted laboratory, and we'll still be able to pay for those analyses. If it's still down at the end of the year and the sample doesn't get taken in the right monitoring period, I mean, there's going to be a missed monitoring violation. I can't undo that, but if that happens, as soon as the sampling site comes back up in the next year, we'll try to come out and grab that sample then to return that missed monitoring to compliance. Just one more thing about sampling. So I send a list of everything that needs to be sampled for all 820 plus systems at the beginning of the year to our contractors. I update them once a month on anything that has been added or deleted, but things happen. So in the past 4 years, we have an average of maybe one system per year, or I'm sorry, not one system, one sample per year that we weren't able to get. If that is the case, and if it is in fact MAP's fault, I apologize, there will still be a monitoring violation. However, I have pre-worded templates as well as CCR language for public notices and CCRs that indicates it was MAP's fault. So in those cases, I can't avoid any violations, but we can avoid enforcement, and we can give you public notice language to help you out. We're going to help you out with all of it and then get it sampled as soon as possible in the next year. Yeah, okay, I think that's all I want to say about that one. So our samplers come out, take samples, get it analyzed. The lab will then send a laboratory report, mostly to the owner or responsible party of record for your system, unless you have already told me that you'd like it to go to a different email address. And many systems have told me that. I have a list of where those are going that I can update at any time. You, as a system, or whoever is on the email list, will get a lab report. I believe it contains an acknowledgement page that lists the samples that were received, as well as a drinking water analytical reporting form, or a DWAR form, or sometimes they're called state forms. And it's going to list the contaminant results, and if there were any exceedances of trigger levels or MCLs, those will have check boxes by them. So this is what an example of the acknowledgement page looks like. It says where it was taken, when it was taken, the contaminants that were taken to be analyzed, and then this is an example of a DWAR form. So you need to look at those and look at the data. You are responsible for looking at that data and seeing if there's anything in there that would trigger increased monitoring, or less likely, but still possible, an MCL violation. So the things you need to look at are nitrate or nitrite trigger limit exceedances, if there is an IOC or RADS MCL exceedance, and additionally for SOCs or VOCs, if there's any detection at all. Any of those things will cause the system to go into quarterly triggered increased monitoring. So while the CACs on our side will be aware of that and change those schedules and notify you, it is also the system's responsibility to be looking at those results and knowing what that means. If it's been over 1 to 2 months since MAP has been out there to sample and you still haven't gotten your results, please give me a call. This is my direct line, and I will get you those results if they're available. Sometimes SOCs take a while, so if it is not available yet, I'll just keep checking each day until it is, and then get you what you need. Also, around CCR time, I do get a lot of requests for data, so let me know if I can verify that you are a system representative. I can grab that data and send it to you so that you have it available for your CCR. Monitoring waivers. The Safe Drinking Water Act allows monitoring waivers for IOCs, SOCs, and VOCs. It's not a complete, you don't have to sample at all, but instead of the once every 3 years, it can go to once every 6 or 9 years. For IOCs, that only includes looking at reviewing data and facility information. So I do that for MAP systems for IOCs. And I will change it if they can be approved. For SOCs and VOCs, it includes looking at the data just like the IOCs, but also adjacent land use analysis, de minimis calculations. There's a lot that goes into it. A lot of times it requires you to hire an engineering group to fill out the application and get it sent in. My point being, if you are in MAP, you by all means are allowed to apply for reduced monitoring waiver for SOCs and VOCs. However, even if those are approved for you and you have reduced monitoring, it will not affect the annual fee. And therefore, the cost you have to put out to getting that application completed will not provide you any benefits because your MAP fee will not change. You're already getting a benefit, a cost benefit by being in the program. So if you want to, if you have a burning desire and you want to get your monitoring waivers for SOCs, VOCs, we're not going to stop you. Just please know that the costs will outweigh the benefits for you. So we encourage you not to do that. But you know, if you want to, that's your decision. Oh, I guess we do that twice. Okay. So that's the basics of the program. Right now, I'm going to go over sampling tips and tricks for when the samplers come out. So to prepare for the samplers, please know how many EPDS taps your system has and where they're located. An EPDS tap entry point to the distribution system. This sampling tap must be after the source of water, after any treatment or storage or pressure tanks, but immediately before where the first customer receives water. So it's the last spot at your water system before the water goes out to be used by the public. My samplers sample 800, right now 827 systems with multiple EPDSs for most of them. You have your system, so we rely on you to know where these EPDS taps are and direct the MAP samplers to the correct spot. So here is a very rudimentary diagram. You have your well. It may or may not go to treatment, may or may not have storage, but there should always be a sampling tap before the distribution system that is known as the entry point to the distribution system, the EPDS. If you're more old school, it used to be called point of entry or POE, but then EPA decided to use that acronym for something else. So it is now called an EPDS. Ensure that all your EPDSs have sampling taps installed so that the sampling can be done. If you're due for a sanitary survey, ADQ inspection, and you don't have a sampling tap, I guarantee you that will be a deficiency that you need to resolve anyway. So best to just get it done. Make sure all EPDSs are in working order when the sampling is scheduled. And like we discussed, if something happens, let us know. Please let us know before we get out there if you can, because that saves us, you know, gas and mileage and sampling trip costs. Make sure the EPDSs are easily accessible. If they're behind a locked security gate, which honestly I would recommend, that's a good idea, but a water system representative must have the key available to allow the samplers in to get the sample. I have instructed the samplers that in no case are they allowed to go to a system and take a sample without a system representative showing them and directing them to the EPDS. A lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but sometimes I get calls, oh, we got a detect, but they were sampled in the wrong spot. And my response will always be, why were the samplers directed to the wrong location? It is the system's responsibility to know where the EPDSs are and to direct the samplers to the right spot. The samplers can't keep track of where 1,200 EPDSs are. They need your assistance to get to the right spot for your system. We recommend tagging all EPDS sample taps with proper identification. So everybody is in agreement where it is and it is labeled. ADQ has purchased some little dog tag metal looking tags. They fit in the palm of your hand. They say ADQ EPDS and then the 3-digit number. If you don't have these, please contact ADQ to get some. I believe at this point, everybody hopefully should have them. The map samplers, I believe, have some on hand and they can assist you in tagging it. you need to tell them where that sampling tap is. My samplers, most of them have been certified operators or have been in the past. So if you need help with identifying it, they can help you, but ultimately it is up to you as a system representative, the system owner, what have you, to know where that sampling tap is and to say this is where it should be. I've asked our ADQ inspectors to just verify that these are all in correct locations when they happen to go out for inspections. So I hope that's being done. I'm sure it is. And if the inspector instructs you to move the tag, then just move it to the right location. Please keep all contact and water system info updated. That ensures accurate billing, accurate sampling. We don't want to overbill you. Again, we're not a money-making operation, and we want to get the sampling correct. Please let us know when an EPDS is out of service. Even if you're not in a participant in this program, anytime a well goes down or an EPDS goes inactive, ADQ needs to know. It helps you avoid mismonitoring violations, because if you're not serving water from that site for the entire monitoring period, then it's unnecessary to give a mismonitoring violation. It also helps MAP avoid unnecessary trips. If we are unable to sample an EPDS, they're going to send me an Exhibit E and I'll be in contact with you. We need to get that issue resolved as soon as possible so that we can reschedule the samplers coming back out. Like we discussed, mismonitoring violations will be issued if the sampling cannot be conducted in the right time frame. Okay, that is how we are handling the program right now, how it's been handled for the last 25 years at least. But moving forward, we're going to try to make this program a little bit better. So we have started a project. You know, before I get on there, are there any questions on what we've gone over so far?
Thank you, Carling. There is one.
Okay.
Looks like, what is the process for MAP participants to receive their sample results from the lab? And that is from Steve Vogel, by the way. Hi, Steve.
So the laboratory sends that data to the system owner. It used to be USPS, but I think they are doing emails now. I have a list of emails. Either the system has given me a list of emails where they want the laboratory data sent, and in absence of that, I just grab the owner email address for that. If you don't know where it's going as a system, or you want it to go somewhere else, please reach out and let me know, and I will make those changes for you. Also, that data that you get is data for you in your system. It does not need to then be submitted to ADQ, because the lab submits that data to us on your behalf.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
All right, good. Let me get a drink. Okay. Let's talk about future state of MAP. So, about a year and a half ago, our budgeting team told us, it looks like we are going to go into the red here pretty soon. I know all of you are aware that inflation has been a little crazy lately. Things have been happening. So luckily, we caught this with enough time to do something about it. This is the catalyst for our new project of updating the program. So we're looking to make MAP better. That includes revising the statutes and revising the rules. So statute-wise, and this has already happened, it was House Bill 2628 this year. We talked about refunds and credits. In the statute, it says that anything over $200,000 in our account has to go back to the system. Because of our budget flow issues, we have changed that from $200,000 to a year's worth of program costs. And we will calculate that by taking the final total cost from the 3 previous years and averaging it. So we are now allowed to retain more money without having to go back to ensure that the program can continue for another year. So I said this before, I'll say it many more times. We're not a money-making program. That's not the intention. The intention is to fund the program and keep it solvent so that it can continue assisting the small drinking water systems. We have also added an allowance in the statute that will not take effect yet. We're working on it. That will allow us to take the triggered increased monitoring at the EPDS. The thought behind that is we take samples and then something happens where there's identification of risk, and then we just drop the system. It's your responsibility to take. We are the monitoring assistance program. We would like to assist you more in monitoring. So we have, before where that was prohibitive from us taking those samples, we have added in the language of the statute that we now may take those samples. So those were the main things we changed in the statute. Statutes first, and then we can change the rule. So with the rule, which is what we're currently working on, we need to increase the fees. And I know everybody hates that. We didn't want to do it, but as you can see by that graph, it's become necessary. We will be increasing it by inflation since the last increase in 2001. That is about 79%. We're also incorporating language to allow us to increase the fee annually by inflation only if it is needed. We don't want to increase it if it's not necessary. Again, we're not trying to bring in tons of money. We only need enough money for sampling and analysis costs. With the allowance of increased triggered monitoring, we need to add in rule authority for us to give invoices for that increased monitoring, because that will be above and beyond the baselines. And also, big win, because PFAS, the new regulation of PFAS stipulates that that sample is to be monitored at the EPDS. MAP is adding that to our menu. So, pardon me, we will be adding PFAS to our sampling list. Okay, talking about funds and how we're going to be changing these. So the last update on the fees was 2001. In 2001, we said it's going to be $250 a year plus $2.57 per service connection. And up until this point, amazingly, we haven't had to increase fees. Since then, the inflation since 2001 is 78.8%. So that is what we will be increasing our fees to in order to keep the program solvent and from running into budgetary issues. That means that the annual base fee is going from $250 to $447, and the annual service connection fee is moving from $2.57 to $4.60. So to put this in actual numbers, an average MAP system has about 369 service connections. For an average MAP system with that many service connections, where the old fees or the current fees, you're paying $1,224 per year. When the new fees come into play, the annual fee will be $2,190. We are proposing to change fees starting in 2025. So we've sent out half of the invoices already this year with the current fees. If you haven't gotten your invoice yet in 2024, it will still be the current $250 plus $257 each service connection. But starting in 2025, the fees will be updated and your invoice will be for more. Let's see, what else do I want to say about this? Let's see, do I have notes? I guess I don't. All right. I know we didn't want to increase fees. I know you don't want them increased, but in order to keep this program running, and it is a huge benefit to Arizona as a whole and the public health of Arizona, it was necessary. Okay. We talked about that we want to add the ability to take the quarterly increased triggered monitoring samples. So this is our proposed process. It is still in progress. We're working on it right now. This is only going to apply to systems who trigger into increased monitoring. And those systems will have to be invoiced for that triggered monitoring. And we'll talk, I'm going to get into it. So the anticipated process is, if your system triggers into increased quarterly monitoring, I, as the map coordinator, am going to contact the system's owner, or whoever I can get on the phone and can make this decision. I am going to offer our assistance in taking these samples. If you say, actually, sorry, let me back up. I'm going to say you've triggered into increased monitoring for quarterly monitoring. This is how much we will charge you per quarter if you would like us to do this. You have the option of saying yes or no. If you say yes, we will add these samples to our repertoire. We will take these quarterly samples for you, and each quarter you're going to get an invoice that is separate from the annual map invoice. I'm going to go over the invoice, I think, on the next slide. But just quickly, we're not charging you extra. We're going to charge you exactly what the contractor is charging us, plus a very small, like $25, $35 administration fee. So it's a straight pass-through, pretty much. You're going to get a quarterly invoice. And then since you have opted to have us assist you, I will be paying attention to your results. And as soon as I notice the results are such that you can be moved back to routine monitoring, I'll work with the CACs to get that moved back. At that point, the system returns to the routine monitoring and the quarterly invoices will stop. If we're not taking the samples, I'm not going to ask money of you. If your system never needs increased quarterly monitoring, this won't apply to your system at all. If your system does trigger into increased monitoring and you say, no, you know what, I want to do this on our own, we'll take care of it, then perfect. It's just going to work as it does now. You won't get any extra invoices. And you will, as it is now, you'll be responsible for, sorry, the cat just sneezed. You'll be responsible for paying attention to your data and asking your CAC to come back on routine when that is appropriate. This process will not start until we have a new contract because it is not stated in this current contract, and that will be in 2026. So we have some time to iron out the details of this, get our process firm and documented, and that is exactly what we're doing now. Oh, I got some cool animation here. Okay, triggered. I want to talk about triggered quarterly monitoring versus treatment quarterly monitoring. So triggered quarterly monitoring is the system receives a detection result above the trigger level. It requires them to go to increased quarterly monitoring until ADQ sees that the water quality is reliably and consistently below the MCL, thus mitigating risk and realizing that the risk to public health is not there. At that point, you can come off of quarterly monitoring. That is what this new process will be covering. If you have a contaminant issue at your system that you have or will install permitted treatment for, so say you, just as an example, you have problems with high arsenic levels, you install arsenic treatment. Once that is installed, approved and installed, your system will have to do quarterly arsenic monitoring for the life of the treatment plant or whatever contaminant you're treating for. That will go on indefinitely until the system no longer needs to treat. This is something MAP will not cover. This is not included in this new quarterly monitoring process. Additionally, there is some confusion. So currently, if you have treatment and therefore are on quarterly monitoring for that contaminant, MAP doesn't take those samples. We don't come out quarterly and take those samples. However, when the MAP samplers are out there once a year for the nitrates and whatever else you need that year, we usually grab any quarterly due to treatment monitoring. The rationale behind it was that some systems don't get this done, and therefore if MAP takes at least one, at least we're getting some data. But that is not the majority of the systems with this instance, and it causes a lot of confusion. Systems want to know when are they coming out so I don't have to take it that quarter, and unfortunately I don't have the information for you. Also, if MAP takes that sample, then sometimes we get 2 samples, and it leads to confusion. So I have been fighting against this for a while, and I finally have approval from management that starting next year, if you have quarterly monitoring due to treatment, it is the system's responsibility already to do that, but I will be removing those entirely from the MAP scheduling. We will not be doing any of those, and that is going to hopefully alleviate some of the confusion that it causes. So again, the new process where we will come out and do triggered monitoring, that's for triggered quarterly monitoring, not treatment quarterly monitoring. MAP will no longer cover treatment quarterly monitoring at all starting next year. For the triggered monitoring, we talked about if I call you and say, hey, you've triggered into quarterly increased monitoring, would you like us to come do your samples? And you say, yes, please. This, let me put my new thing. This is example only, not real prices. That quarterly invoice is going to consist of what we are being charged by the contractor for that specific analysis, plus what we're being charged by the contractor for the sampling trip fee to go out to the system and get that done. Mostly in regular sampling, this is all covered by the annual invoices. The annual invoices don't cover this increased monitoring, so we will be pushing this through to you. And then we're going to have, like I said, a very small administrative fee that covers getting the samples added to the schedule, getting invoices created and sent out, etc. So if you trigger into increased monitoring, I'll call you, tell you what the real price will be. This is just approximations right now. And say, do you agree with this or not? If you do, and then for any reason, if the price of the contract, if the contracted prices change at all, I will contact the system again and say, hey, prices have gone up a little bit. Do you still want us to do it for this new price? And at that point, you can say, yeah, that's fine, keep going. Or you can say, no, it's now too expensive, I'll go to my own lab. So this is a fully optional process for the systems. We're doing this to assist you and help. We're not doing this to nickel and dime you. Okay, that's a lot of talking. So this is for our new processes, our new statute and rule changes. This is where we are. We had some stakeholder meetings in late 2023 and early 2024 to discuss all of this. So hopefully if you're a MAP participating system, none of this is fully new information to you. So we've had those stakeholder meetings, which were required. We got feedback, which was almost all positive and encouraging us to increase the fees so that the program can remain. Obviously, you don't want the fees increased just because, but we want the program to remain here, and so do the systems that are participating in the program. We got the statute changed. That was a big lift. Right now, we are drafting the rule language to get that changed to what our new vision is. Once that is done, in the fourth quarter, it needs to go through a couple of different government agency approvals to get that draft language finalized. And then once the approvals are done, we anticipate the new fees starting in the first quarter of 2025. That was a lot of information I threw at you. Here is my name, my email address, my direct phone number. You can contact me either way. I have this email box open on my computer all day, every day while I'm at work. I prefer email, but either way works for me, and I will respond to either. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Garling. Yes, there seems to be one more here. If a house is not occupied and has no active service agreement with the water company, does that count as a service connection for the MAP census?
If there is no active connection and no active agreement with that location, I would say no, that does not count. So for when you're giving us how many service connections do you have, I want active service connections. That might mean it changes every year, and that's okay. I'll send out the form every year and you can change it and we'll get that done. But we want the most accurate information. Any other questions? Okay, then I'm gonna put a plug in for if you are a MAP participating system and you haven't sent me back your MAP update card yet, please check your emails. That email came from the email address here on the screen, map@azdeq.gov. I will reach out to you if I haven't gotten it in a couple weeks. Also, if you are a system, excluding transient systems, because honestly, this program has just not been cost beneficial to you. But if you are a community or a non-transient, non-community system that is not in MAP, and this seems like something that you want our assistance in taking the samples and supplementing your sampling staff, then please reach out to me. We are always willing to take on more people if it means protecting the public health. So
Caroline, we have one more question.
Absolutely.
Is the contracting process competitive?
I don't fully know how to answer. I believe so. It follows the same procurement procedures that all government contracts follow. We go out to bid. Well, let's back up a little bit. We review when the time comes. We review our current contract, make any changes that might be necessary. Like in this next one, we'll add increased trigger sampling. We'll add PFAS, and then we go out to bid. There's options for potential bidders to send in questions and get information that they need to make bids. And then once we have all our bids in, we do a, and forgive me, I forget what the official thing is called, but we have a meeting and go over all the bids and see which is the most beneficial to the program itself and to the water system. So I would consider that a competitive contracting process.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Carlene.
Okay, thank you.
All right. On that note, this does wrap up our webinar for the day. Here are all the presenters that you have heard today and their direct contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to follow up with any of the names you see here. If you would like copies of the presentation itself, there is a QR code there at the bottom to scan, or you can just take a picture and scan it later. If you needed to get your agenda as proof of attendance today, please make sure you go to the handout dropdown. It is titled Compliance and Operator Ethics webinar. If you don't have access to the handout, please reach out to the OpCert program or even myself, and I will go ahead and send you a copy of the agenda. And with that being said, like I mentioned earlier, this webinar is recorded. We'll have this on our OpCert YouTube playlist within the next couple of weeks for further review. Thank you all for attending today and have a great day and a safe weekend. Carling, are you still available online?
I am.
Sounds like we might have one more question for you.
Sure.
When is the next RFP going out for the next contract period?
We'll start working on it next year in 2025. So I'm not sure the month, but I'd say start checking the portal between April and June, and it should be up then, I believe. And if anybody is interested in bidding on that or anything, and you want more specific information, you can send me an email and I will follow up with procurement and get that specific detailed information and send that to you.
Thank you, Carling. We'll leave the webinar open for another 30 seconds so everyone can download the appropriate handouts or take screenshots.